Chapter 899. After Lu Ping returned to Huangli Island, he immediately started moving the medium-sized spirit vein from the House of Gold to Huangli Island. Due to the spirit transfer formation and the jade-like artifact spirit that Zhao Yuqiang had set up back then, the spirit vein had almost run out of, or in the past 4,000 years. Adding on the damage Lu Ping had suffered while moving the spirit vein, he would need to seal the spirit vein for a period of time in order to completely recover. Because this spirit vein was of great importance, Lu Ping didn't make it public and secretly moved it to an inconspicuous place not far from Lu Ping's cave abode. Sixth brother Lei directly opened up a cave abode nearby and secretly guarded the spirit vein. After hearing sixth brother Lei's mysterious words, Lu Ping couldn't help but be surprised. Who would want to see him outside? Half a day later, Lu Ping returned to the cave abode and gave some orders to Hu Lily and sixth brother Lei. Then, he sent someone to call Wang Qi and Tianyu over. Before Wang Qi broke through to the core forging realm, he had been cultivating with Du Feng. Due to Lu Ping's intentional orders, Du Feng had suppressed Wang Qi's cultivation and prevented him from breaking through. This allowed Wang Qi to accumulate enough foundation in the blood condensation realm. After advancing to the core forging realm on Frost Island, Wang Qi's foundation was unleashed. In just a dozen or so years, Wang Qi's cultivation had broken through to the second level of the core forging realm. Tianyu had also touched the threshold of the second level of the core forging realm. With the help of the medium-sized spirit vein on Huangli Island, he had also successfully entered the core forging realm. Right now, both of them were Lu Ping's disciples. Wang Qi was the first to break through to the core forging realm and become the first disciple of Hearing Wave Manor. Tianyu was the second. Lu Ping brought the two of them to Heaven Spirit Mountain to meet his master, Lu Tianling, Laozu. The sect master of Heaven Spirit Mountain couldn't help but give his two grand disciples a gift that he had prepared beforehand. After the greetings, Lu Ping finally told his master the purpose of his visit. Lu Tianling Laozu frowned and said, "Oh, these two disciples of yours have only been under your tutelage for a short while, haven't they? They've only learned a small portion of your abilities, yet you dare to throw one of them to the Middle Earth and the other to Frost Island?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "Their experiences over the years have all been arranged by me. I have taught them a lot of what needs to be taught, and I have also provided them with a platform to hone themselves. As for how much they can learn, it will depend on their own efforts and luck. As the saying goes, if a jade is not polished, it will not be useful. If they think that they are unpolished jade, they will not worry about their own futures." Lu Tianling Laozu looked at the two grand disciples, Wang Qi and Tianyu. Seeing that they both had a well-thought-out expression, he smiled and said, "It seems that I, as the Grand Master, am being unreasonable. Fine, since you have already arranged everything, then let's go according to your plan." After a moment of silence, Lu Tianling Laozu continued, "After a while, your senior uncle Tianqin will go to the Middle Earth to replace your senior uncle Tianfeng. Junior nephew Xianfeng will also come back. This way, Yingshanside Courtyard will have one less pill master, and Xian you can go to Yingshanside Courtyard to fill the gap. As for Xianqi, she should still follow Xianfeng. Mara's attacks on Frost Island are becoming more frequent and intense, so a big battle is likely to be unavoidable. Frost Island is too important to the cultivation world of North Sea, so North Sea will definitely go all out. You just need to be careful when you get there." Wang Qi and Tianyu thanked the Grandmaster and were about to leave the Palace of Repetition Beauty when they saw Lu Ping take out two storage pouches and say, "These are some of the things you will need for your daily cultivation. Use them as you see fit." After passing the storage pouches to the two of them, Lu Ping looked at Tianyu and said, "That spirit explosion art can be considered a secret alchemy technique of mine. You need to practice it seriously. It is not easy to obtain the purple crystal royal jelly, so you must use it carefully. In the Middle Earth, other than yourself, do not let anyone know that you have such a treasure on you. Otherwise, there will be a great disaster. The Middle Earth is filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons, so don't be restricted to a corner of Yingshanside Courtyard." Then, Lu Ping looked at Wang Qi and said, "Although the cultivation method you've been cultivating is not bad in our sect, it's still far from being comparable to our sect's 5 true inheritances. Cultivate the jade scroll I gave you on Frost Island seriously. The metal elemental cultivation method in it is no weaker than our sect's 5 true inheritances. If you're lucky enough in the future, you might even be able to reach the Grand Cultivator realm. Of course, if you become complacent just because you've become my disciple, I don't mind expelling you too from the sect. After a round of admonishment, Lu Ping sent the two of them out. When he turned around, he saw Lu Tianling looking at him with a smile and said, "Not bad. This teacher has done a good job combining strength and gentleness. Did you enjoy it?" Lu Ping said honestly, "I won't hide it from you, teacher. I was just pretending, but it was indeed very tiring. I do envy your 9 disciples, including Sister Xian. They have all been taught by teacher to such an extent. In this aspect, I am far inferior." Lu Tianling Laozu smiled, then his face darkened. He said, "This time, I did not intend to let you participate, but you insisted on coming. Although your current strength can even kill Dharma adepts, there are mid-Dharma adepts from various sects participating in this trip to the vast sea treasure. Who knows, there might be people with ulterior motives who will go after you." Lu Ping nodded and said, "I understand. Don't worry, teacher. What's more, Elder Tiankong is going with me this time, so there's nothing for me to worry about." Lu Tianling Laozu smiled and said, "You're a smart one. However, this time when you enter the vast sea treasure, you have to be especially careful of the primordial crocodile clan practitioners. You killed the golden serpent Laozu's spirit companion beast, and his son, daughter, and adopted son also died by your hands. It can be said that there is an irreconcilable hatred between you and him." Lu Ping stepped on the ocean-crossing boat and sped all the way to a deserted island near Huanyu Island. Tiankong Laozu had already been waiting there for a long time. Because the buildings on Huanyu Island had all collapsed because of the vast sea treasure that had suddenly been unearthed, the practitioners of the various sects had no place to stay. In addition, the sects and the North Sea Demon Clan had to keep an eye on each other, so the practitioners of the various sects had settled on the deserted islands and coral islands near Huanyu Island. When Tiankong Laozu saw Lu Ping coming, he couldn't help but frown and say, "This time, the various sects set the rules for entering the vast sea treasure, requiring each sect to only allow one mid-Dharma adept to bring one core forging disciple. The sects of the North Sea and the Demon Clan knew that your strength far exceeds that of a core forging cultivator of the same level, but they still set such a rule. The old man sensed that this was aimed at you, so the old man specially informed the sect leader that you're not allowed to come. I didn't think that you'd come yourself." Lu Ping smiled and said, "We still don't know what the situation inside the vast sea treasure is like, and the sects can't possibly come just for their disciples. As long as these people focus their energy on the vast sea treasure, then anything can happen. Furthermore, it won't be that easy for them to take the lives of their disciples." Tiankong Laozu laughed and said, "Looks like the old man is really getting old. I can't stand the vigor of you youngsters. Fine. Although the old man doesn't have long to live, other than the Dharma adepts, these people are nothing to the old man. This time, I'll let the old man go crazy with you." When Lu Ping saw Tiankong Laozu's wizened and old face, he sighed in dissatisfaction. Tiankong Laozu was originally the youngest disciple among the first generation of disciples that Zhenling had reached the Dharma stage. His talent and training was not below that of Tianxiang Laozu. Originally, Zhenling had high hopes for him, but after being schemed against by Xinling's sect, his foundation was damaged, and he could only use longevity pills to prolong his life. Fortunately, Tiankong Laozu took the opportunity to break through to the mid-Dharma stage, which prolonged his lifespan by 200 years. Now, he only had 70 to 80 years left. Although Tiankong Laozu's words were passionate, Lu Ping could hear the love and concern in them. Obviously, Tiankong Laozu was willing to risk his life to protect Lu Ping. Lu Ping was touched, but he maintained a smile on his face and said, "You worry too much, Uncle Master. Uncle Master also knows that I have obtained many good things during my travels, including the Wonder Dew of 10,000 and the formula for the 30-year longevity pill. I have previously used the Wonder Dew of 10,000 to refine a 15-year longevity pill. This time, with the breakthrough in my training, I am confident that I can also refine a 20-year longevity pill. If I continue to practice my alchemy skills, when I can refine a 30-year longevity pill, I can consume 3 longevity pills. Even if I can't extend my lifespan by 90 years, I can at least extend it by 60 to 70 years. Seeing that Tiankong Laozu was only calmly listening to Lu Ping with a smile, Lu Ping continued, if you have this 130 to 140 years buffer, Uncle Master might be able to break through to the late Dharma stage. If you can really overcome the second Thunder Trial and become the second Grand Practitioner of our sect, not only will there be hope for our sect to become a large sect, but you will also be able to extend your lifespan by another 200 years. After listening to Lu Ping, Tiankong Laozu laughed loudly and said, you are an interesting kid, but these are all your own assumptions. The old man knows his own body very well. In these hundreds of years since he entered the mid-Dharma stage, the old man's training has not improved at all. This is a state where his body has aged to its limit. No matter how many longevity pills he has, he will only be able to prolong his life, let alone become a grand practitioner. Lu Ping could not help but feel anxious and said, no matter what, we have to give it a try. Moreover, Tiankong Laozu waved his hand, intending to interrupt Lu Ping's words, and said, there is no need to try. Even if the power of your 7 treasures Thunder Calabash is 10 times stronger, it will not be able to help the old man overcome the Thunder Trial. Let me put it this way, with the current state of the old man, I am afraid that he will not even be able to summon the Thunder Trial, so how will he overcome it? Lu Ping originally wanted to say something, but he heard Tiankong Laozu say, the demons and the Songhai sect have already begun to move. We should follow them as well. We cannot fall behind. After all, this treasure was created by Songhai Laozu alone. Even if there are good things in it, there cannot be too much. When the time comes, it will inevitably be a chaotic battle. Lu Ping said strangely, although this treasure has been unearthed, the formation prohibition is intact. How will the cultivators of the various sects break it? Are they going to break it by force? Tiankong Laozu said with a smile, isn't it a forced breakthrough? This kind of large protective formation supported by the spiritual vein is different from those prohibition formations. Even the effect of the restriction-breaking talisman on it is limited. The demon race has prepared for many years. Maybe there is a way. The Songhai sect also has a thin water sword. Although it is not the complete thin water sword that can be used as the key, it should be quite effective in breaking the formation. Tiankong Laozu saw Lu Ping's thoughtful expression and thought that he was worried that his sect's progress would fall behind the other sects, so he said with a smile, our sect may not be slower than the others. Look at this. An exquisite axe the size of a palm flashed in Tiankong Laozu's palm. It was the second disaster spiritual treasure mountain splitting axe from the Yingtian dojo. Lu Ping suddenly laughed and said, Martial uncle, maybe our progress can go ahead of the Songhai sect. After saying that, under the surprised gaze of Tiankong Laozu, the light of the long flowing sword also flashed in Lu Ping's hand. Chapter 900. The sudden appearance of the Chonglu sword surprised Tiankong Laozu, but Laozu did not ask about the origin of the flying sword. He only said, it really is Duobao boy. No wonder you were so eager to come this time. Lu Ping followed behind Laozu, and the two of them arrived at the foot of Huanyu Island's lone peak. At this time, Laozu from various sects had already surrounded the lone peak from all directions. There were mid-Dharma Laozu everywhere, so Lu Ping did not dare to use his divine will unscrupulously. He could only use his eyes to look around. He only saw that the two sects on his left and right were the giant whale demon King Kong Jing from the North Sea Abyss. Behind him was a similarly burly core forging adept, but this late core forging adept was a size smaller than Kong Jing. On the other side was the Sea Flame sect's mid-Dharma adept, Hai Hun Laozu. Behind him was also a late core forging adept. Although Lu Ping did not use his divine will, Tiankong Laozu did not have such scruples. After a while, he said, it seems that there will be a fierce battle. The Songhai sect sent Dungi Laozu this time. Xinling's sect sent Feng Shutao, and the primordial crocodile clan sent Ao Dian. Lu Ping thought about it and said, will these sects join forces? Old Ancestor Heavenly Peace shook his head and said, they naturally won't join hands. After all, the crime of colluding with the demon race isn't something that these few sects can bear. Our sect's abilities are extremely strong now, so not only will it not help the situation if I die, It will even incite an intense counterattack from our sect. However, a sneak attack from the dark is unavoidable. Especially you, they won't let you continue to grow. A muffled sound was heard. Tiankong Laozu said, "The Songhai sect can't wait to make the first move." As soon as Tiankong Laozu's voice faded, a few sounds rang out in succession. The other sects and the demon race also began to break the array formations they were facing. Tiankong Laozu tossed the mountain-splitting axe into the size of an axe. Tiankong Laozu held it in his hand and smashed it towards the array in front of him. With a loud rumbling sound, the spirit array barrier in a radius of several hundred feet began to shake violently, and cracks of various sizes appeared on the barrier wall in front of the two. Numerous divine wills were directed towards Tiankong Laozu and Lu Ping. Clearly, it was because Tiankong Laozu had caused too much of a commotion using the mountain-splitting hoe. Tiankong Laozu stretched out his hand and waved it around. An invisible spirit array spread out in the air. The divine wills that came from all directions were all blocked outside the spirit array. Tiankong Laozu clearly did not want to expose the existence of the mountain-splitting axe. After Tiankong Laozu blocked the surrounding divine wills, he said, "I miscalculated. I didn't expect the power of the mountain-splitting axe to be so strong." When Tiankong Laozu set up the spirit array barrier, Lu Ping had already taken out his flowing sword. With a peefed sound, the flowing sword pierced the densest part of the cracks created by the mountain-splitting axe. In an instant, half of the sword blade went in. Tiankong Laozu shouted, at first glance, "This flying sword is comparable to a spirit treasure like the mountain-splitting axe." It is said that the thin water-flowing sword is the key left behind by Songhai Laozu in the past. It seems that it truly lives up to its reputation. Lu Ping used the long stream sword to carve out a fist-sized hole in the protective array formation. Then, he sheathed the sword. With this hole, with the mountain-splitting axe's power, it would be easy for him to continue expanding the array formation. Without waiting for the formation to restore the hole, old ancestor Tiankang's mountain-splitting battle axe smashed onto it for the second time. After another violent tremor, this fist-sized hole had already expanded to the size of half a foot. With a thought, Lu Ping used the beautiful autumn dew sword in an attempt to expand the hole. However, the effect was minimal. It was only able to prevent the hole from restoring itself. Tiankong Laozu chopped the third time, and the hole was once again widened. Lu Ping used both his hands to form dozens of seals. These were the seals that Lu Ping learned from the purple jade slip. However, the effect was still not great. Lu Ping could only give up. However, he didn't know that his next two attacks also surprised Tiankong Laozu. The pair of beautiful autumn dew swords were only magic treasures that were condensed with 7 seals. They were not like the flowing sword, which was left behind by Songhai Laozu to break the spirit array. However, in the hands of Lu Ping, he was still able to suppress the spirit array that was rapidly restoring itself. After that, he executed the dozens of restriction-breaking spells and similarly suppressed the restoration of the formation. One had to know that restriction-breaking spells were already extremely hard to learn. Even though they weren't as precious as the inheritance of restriction-breaking talismans, they were still hard to learn and even harder to master. Forefather Tiankong didn't expect Lu Ping to actually have such a deep understanding of restriction-breaking spells. In the whole of Jinling, only Liang Tianfeng Laozu had such a deep understanding of seals. This time, if the demon race hadn't strongly requested for a mid-Dharma adept to bring along a core forging adept, Jinling might have called Tianfeng Laozu back from Central Plains. When Tiankong Laozu smashed the 4th time, the whole hole was big enough for 2 people to go in. A strong spiritual aura spewed out from the hole. Tiankong Laozu took a deep breath and said, "Not bad. There is at least a large spiritual vein supporting the operation of the spirit array. No wonder it was so troublesome to break it." Lu Ping stretched out his index finger and drew a circle in front of the open hole. A space hole opened, and a few purple crystal bees flew into the lonely peak from the hole. Lu Ping saw that the purple crystal bees were safe and sound, then said, "Uncle Master, I will go in first." Tiankong Laozu saw that Lu Ping went into the hole first, shook his head and said, using purple crystal bees to explore the way. This is the first time in the world of cultivation. In front of them was a spiritual herb garden. Because the lonely peak was too straight, the area of the spiritual herb garden was not very big. However, there were a lot of 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs in it. Lu Ping waved his hand and released a swarm of bees to fly in the spiritual herb garden. Then, he picked the most valuable hundreds of 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs. At the same time, he also collected many spiritual herb seeds that were extremely rare in the world of cultivation. After that, he stopped. When he looked up, he found that Tian Kong Laozu was still working hard to collect these spiritual herbs. Different from Lu Ping's picking, Tian Kong Laozu used a carpet collection method, trying to not let go of a single spiritual herb. Lu Ping smiled and said, "Uncle Master, let's go up quickly, or we may fall behind." Tian Kong Laozu was quite reluctant to look at the spiritual herb garden here, but he also knew that what Lu Ping said was the truth. He just said, "It's a pity for this spiritual herb garden. I don't know if this place can be preserved when the battle starts." Back on Failing Island, Lu Ping had already seen the 3,000-year-old spirit herb gardens of large sections. Not to mention, the spirit herbs there were all up to Lu Ping's whims. Naturally, this small spirit herb garden was no longer a rare sight. The relic left by Songhai Laozu, in addition to the mountain guarding formation that completely surrounded the entire lonely peak, was also divided into many areas, and each area was separated by a formation. Only by breaking through these formations could one break into a new area. Tian Kong Laozu and Lu Ping, one with a battle axe and the other with a sword, cooperated with each other. Often, Lu Ping used the Chonglu sword's ability to break formations to first open a hole in the formation shield, and then Tian Kong Laozu used the tyrannical power of the mountain-splitting axe to expand the gap, gradually forming a gap that was big enough for two people to enter. The two people joined forces and moved forward at an extremely fast speed. It could be described as a rampage. In the blink of an eye, they had broken through the third formation shield. This place looked like a warehouse, but the things inside were not very good. Presumably, they were the things that Songhai Laozu had casually thrown away in the past. Most of them were ordinary magic tools, spiritual materials, and the like. Lu Ping and Tian Kong Laozu collected these things while asking Linglong's wine cauldron in the core space. "Linglong, there is a large spiritual vein here. Do you have a way to control it first?" Linglong's hands grasped the edge of the wine cauldron and took a deep breath. Suddenly, two streams of rich purple qi flew out from the danxia and entered Linglong's body through Linglong's nostrils. Linglong narrowed her eyes in extreme comfort, like a drug addict. Since Lu Ping had advanced to the peak of core forging, Linglong had become more dependent on Lu Ping's Xinqi and was no longer as picky as before. Hearing Lu Ping's question, she lazily said, "Linglong has no way. Unless you can find a place that is connected to an earth vein, a spirit vein, or a mineral vein. Only then may it be possible to establish a connection with a large spiritual vein along the earth vein. But at most, you can only influence a large spiritual vein. A large spiritual vein is not so easy to control, unless you can find the source of the large spiritual vein." Lu Ping said helplessly, "Then forget it." Lu Ping saw that Tian Kong Laozu had already collected everything that could be collected, and the two of them began to crack the fourth protective array. The fourth protective wall was already at the waist of the lone peak. Behind the protective wall floated a dozen or so mystic treasures. Lu Ping scanned through them with his divine will and found that most of them were below the level of spirit connecting mystic treasures. Lu Ping wasn't interested in them at all. On the other hand, Patriarch Tian Kong continued to suppress the mystic treasures one by one and put them away. At this time, Linglong said in the core space, "Maybe you can let Dabeo out and see if he can find anything." Lu Ping said, "These are all mid-Dharma Laozu, and Dabeo's earth escape may not be able to hide from them. Moreover, these arrays are all over the lonely peak, and the underground has also been infiltrated. Dabeo will be in great danger if he goes down. What if he cooperates with me?" Linglong made a solemn vow in the core space. Tian Kong Laozu put away all the treasures and turned to see Lu Ping release a fat, gray-skinned rat from the spiritual beast bag at his waist. Tian Kong Laozu said in surprise, this is the spirit-seeking rat under you? Immediately, Tian Kong Laozu continued. The underground here is also full of prohibitions. Its cultivation is too low, and its strength is too weak. Don't take the risk. It is not easy to train a spirit-seeking rat to this level. Lu Ping smiled and said, Don't worry, Uncle Master. This guy is very cunning, and will never go to dangerous places. Chapter 901. This time, the human and demon clans worked together to excavate vast ocean Laozu's treasure. If there was anyone who was most unwilling, it would be the Songhai sect. The Songhai sect had always regarded vast ocean Laozu's treasure as their own. Therefore, they had been diligently searching for the whereabouts of the thin water-flowing sword. For this reason, the Songhai sect and Songlang sect were reunited. Together with Shenling sect and Xinling sect, they once again formed a tripartite alliance in the North Sea. However, before the Songhai sect could retrieve the long water-flowing sword, the demon clan had somehow confirmed the location of vast ocean Laozu's treasure. This caused the entire Songhai sect to panic. How could the Songhai sect, which had always regarded vast ocean Laozu's treasure as their own, allow others to touch it? Therefore, in the following years of fighting against the demon clan outside Huanyu Island, the demon clan contributed the most. However, the Songhai sect's performance only strengthened the demon clan and the North Sea sect's belief in vast ocean Laozu's treasure. For a time, the North Sea sects, which were originally meant to resist the demon clan, began to have their own plans. Naturally, they all had different ideas about vast ocean Laozu's treasure. The Songhai sect cultivator who came with Dongi Laozu was Zhang Shi's disciple. This disciple was also at the peak of core forging. He was one of the best among the Songhai sect's third-generation disciples. He was also a seedling that the Songhai sect focused on cultivating to advance to the Dharma manifestation stage in the future. Just like how they cultivated Zhang Shi back then, the Songhai sect always liked to place their best disciples in the dark, hoping that they could avoid the eyes of other sects and grow up safely. Dongi Laozu did not use the thin water-flowing sword. Instead, he used a treasure that looked like an iron medallion. This black iron medallion had 2 words written on it, Tiao Hai. Dongi Laozu swung the iron medallion in his hand forward. A fine black water rushed out of the medallion and then split into 9. In the blink of an eye, 9 small holes were drilled into the protective wall in front of them. The 9 holes were distributed in a circular pattern, and after each hole was opened, the protective array formation did not begin to recover. At this moment, a flying sword flew out from Zhang Shi's disciple's hand and slashed at the array formation barrier. It cut through the barrier between the 2 small holes and connected the 2 holes together. Wasn't that flying sword the thin water sword or something else? The disciple slashed out 8 times in a row, cutting through the protective wall between the 9 circular holes. This way, the 9 holes formed a hole. Then, with a flying kick, the isolated protective wall was kicked away, forming a circular hole. If Lu Ping was here, he would definitely be surprised that not only was this disciple's swordsmanship exquisite, he also seemed to have mastered some secret method. The power of the thin water-flowing sword in his hands far exceeded the power of Lu Ping's flowing sword. However, the amount of vital energy consumed was far less than Lu Ping's. Dongi Laozu saw the hole open and smiled. This is already the 5th protective wall broken. According to previous estimates, we are already past the halfway point of the mountain. We only need to break through 2 or 3 protective walls to reach the top of the lonely peak. Dongi Laozu then looked at the disciple wielding the thin water sword and smiled. Zhou Tong, your swordsmanship is getting more and more exquisite. It seems that this time your teacher really came prepared when he recommended you to me. Letting you wield the thin water sword is also the right choice. The disciple called Zhou Tong took back the thin water sword and said, Grandmaster, how is my swordsmanship compared to that Lu Xinping? Elder Ancestor Dongi was taken aback. He let out an imperceptible sigh. He turned around and smiled. The path of cultivation is still long. Whoever reaches the end will be the victor. Being strong now doesn't mean you will be strong in the future. Zhou Tong frowned. Dongi Laozu didn't say it explicitly, but Zhou Tong could hear the meaning in Dongi Laozu's words. At least for now, he still couldn't compare to that water sword immortal. Dongi Laozu saw that Zhou Tong's expression didn't ease up and was afraid that he would have a knot in his heart. This Zhou Tong was one of the top third-generation disciples of Songhai sect. The future of Songhai sect might depend on them. So he said, "The cultivation world is full of danger. Those geniuses who die prematurely are never true geniuses. Lu Xianping, this person is too sharp." Zhou Tong naturally understood the meaning in Dongi Laozu's words. He raised an eyebrow and said, "Grand Master, are you saying that someone wants to kill him?" Primordial Crocodile's Aodian, Xianling sect's Feng Shutao, who doesn't want this future star of Xianling to die. Even the old man will not hesitate to kill him when the time comes. Dongi Laozu's murderous words made Zhou Tong's heart palpitate. Dongi Laozu turned to look at Zhou Tong and said, "By the same logic, if there is a chance, you will also be a target for others to kill. So in Founder Songhai's cave abode, it's best that you don't leave his sight." As the two of them walked into the fifth barrier, a dull sound suddenly came from not far away. Dongi Laozu's footsteps paused. He said in surprise, "Someone is starting to break the fifth barrier? Could it be the demons? They've been preparing for so long. Could it be that the Chonglu sword is really in the hands of the demons?" Zhou Tong saw a spirit-nurturing grade artifact floating in the middle of the barrier. He hurried forward to subdue it. After hearing Dongi Laozu's words, he asked, "Grandmaster, what treasures will be in Founder Songhai's cave abode? Why would the demons spend so much time preparing for this?" Dongi Laozu thought for a moment. He felt that this matter was no longer a secret, so he asked, "Do you know about the 3 treasures of the Songhai?" Zhou Tong looked in surprise at the black metal token in Dongi Laozu's hand. He said, "This disciple knows. The 3 treasures of the Songhai are the Sea Transfer Token, the Songhai Bell, and the Cloud Sail. They are the 3 spiritual treasures that Founder Songhai used to dominate the North Sea cultivation world." Dongi Laozu smiled. "That's right. The Sea Transfer Token has always been passed down in our sect. It's in the hands of the old man. Of the other 2, at least the Songhai Bell is in this relic. One spiritual treasure is enough for the demons to plot for so long. Moreover, Laozu's relic doesn't only have these things. Just the large spirit vein in this lone peak is enough for the sects of the North Sea to fight to the death." As he spoke, Patriarch Dongi pointed the sea-transferring medallion at the spirit-nurturing Dharma treasure that resembled a horsetail whisk. The violently trembling Dharma treasure suddenly stopped. Zhou Tong took the opportunity to put it away and heard Patriarch Dongi say with a laugh, "Your luck is not bad. This Dharma treasure has 7 treasure seals, but we have to speed up. The others are not too far behind us." Zhou Tong used the thin water sword to help Dongi Laozu continue to break the 6th barrier's restriction. At the same time, he asked, "Grandmaster, there is one thing that disciple doesn't understand. Since Founder Songhai founded our sect, why is his relic not in our sect, but in a place that even we don't know about?" Zhou Tong's question seemed to make Dongi Laozu feel very embarrassed. In the end, he just said vaguely, "Even our ancestor Laozu didn't know about this. Maybe Founder Songhai had other difficulties." Tian Kong Laozu and Lu Ping were just about to break the 5th barrier when they heard a roar from afar. Tian Kong Laozu frowned and said, "Someone has entered the 5th barrier before us. I don't know if it's the demon race or Songhai sect." Lu Ping frowned and raised the flowing sword. He pierced 2 fist-sized holes in the protective wall that Laozu had cracked. He said, "It should be Songhai sect. I always feel that there is a part of the flowing sword's power that hasn't been unleashed. And this hidden power seems to be specially designed to deal with this relic. Only Songhai sect's inherited secret technique can activate it. That Songhai sect can use the thin water sword's restraining function to the greatest extent. As long as the swordsman isn't too weak, he might be even more powerful than me." Tian Kong Laozu nodded and said, "That's nothing." But this time, Dongi's arrival reminded the old man of a legend about the magic treasure that Songhai Laozu used to roam the North Sea. Lu Ping blinked and said, "The 3 treasures of the Songhai, the Sea Transfer Order, the Songhai Bell, and the Cloud Sail?" Tian Kong Laozu nodded and said, "Each of these 3 treasures is only a first tribulation spiritual treasure. But when they combine, Their power is even greater than a second tribulation spiritual treasure. Among them, only the Songhai Bell is Songhai Laozu's true spiritual treasure. It's also the most powerful treasure among the three treasures. Lu Ping had heard of the Tianxian sects, Songhai Laozu's seven folding fans. When they combine, they are more powerful than a second tribulation spiritual treasure. And Songhai Laozu has been planning to make them go through the second thunder tribulation. So when they combine, even a pure young spiritual treasure that has gone through the third thunder tribulation may not be a match for it. Therefore, when Lu Ping heard Tian Kong Laozu mention the three treasures of the Songhai, Lu Ping was not surprised. He just asked, "Martial Uncle Master, do you mean that these three treasures are in Songhai Laozu's inheritance?" Tian Kong Laozu shook his head and said, "No, at least the sea transferring order has always been in the hands of Songhai sect. And Dongi Laozu is in charge of the sea transferring order in this generation of Songhai sect. The spiritual treasures in this inheritance may be the Songhai Bell and the Song Yun Fan. But it's said that Song Yun Fan has been given away by Songhai Laozu. I don't know whether it's true or not." The two broke the sixth barrier. Tian Kong Laozu finally smiled and said, "Finally, my luck has changed. I've come across some good things." But as soon as Tian Kong Laozu's voice fell, a loud noise came from the other side of this space. Old ancestor Tian Kong and Lu Ping looked at each other, and both of them quickly went forward to suppress the two glossy green ghost fires that were chasing each other in midair. Just before the protective wall shattered, old ancestor Tian Kong had already put away the ghost spirit fires and started to be on guard against the incoming people. Clatter! The wall was completely destroyed, and two burly men walked into the wall one after another. They happened to see Lu Ping putting away a strange green flame into his space pouch. Chapter 902. So it's fellow Taoist Tian Kong. The newcomer laughed, but when he saw the will-o-wisp disappear from Lu Ping's hand, his eyes narrowed. His ferocious aura and loud laughter caused the surrounding walls to vibrate. "Demon King Kong, you seem to have gone in the wrong direction. That's why you're late." Tian Kong Laozu smiled. The newcomer was the great whale demon king Kong Jing, Laozu. The burly man standing behind him looked very similar to Kong Jing, but his physique was slightly smaller than Kong Jing. Just as Kong Jing and Tian Kong Laozu were confronting each other, Kong Jing looked at Lu Ping with surging battle intent. Lu Ping, on the other hand, stood quietly behind old ancestor Tian Kong, his deep gaze fixed on Monster King Kong Jing. He basically ignored the core-forging monster cultivator's provocation. Demon King Kong Jing and old ancestor Tian Kong looked at each other silently for a moment. Suddenly, a smile appeared on Demon King Kong Jing's face, and he said, "We have indeed come to the wrong place. Dao friend Tian Kong, please forgive us." Tian Kong Laozu also smiled and said, "The higher you go, the narrower the lonely peak becomes. It's inevitable that Demon King Kong made a mistake." Kong Jing shifted his gaze to Lu Ping and said, "You must be the famous water sword immortal, fellow Taoist Lu Xianping?" Monster King Kong Jing addressed Lu Ping as fellow Taoist, clearly putting Lu Ping on the same level as himself. Although the humans and monsters were enemies, it was precisely because of this that Monster King Kong Jing's words elevated Lu Ping's status even higher. A person's value could only be fully reflected by the opponent's affirmation. Therefore, not only did Lu Ping feel flattered by Kong Jing's action, even Tian Kong Laozu was surprised. Lu Ping quickly said, "I don't deserve to be called a fellow Taoist. I am Lu Xianping." Not bad indeed. I just don't know if you can come out of this battle alive. Fellow Taoist Aodian has always been thinking about you, little friend." Kong Jing nodded approvingly and said, not bad indeed." After Demon Monarch Kong Jing finished speaking, he actually brought the core forging stage giant whale demon back through the open passageway. Lu Ping drew a hand seal in front of him and slapped it on the protective barrier where Kong Jing and the others had left. The damaged protective barrier that was shrinking instantly doubled in size, and in just a few moments, it was as good as new. This Demon King Kong Jing is quite interesting. He's quite ambitious. Old ancestor Tian Kong said thoughtfully as he glanced at the battle technique barrier that Lu Ping had repaired and was in perfect condition. Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "Granduncle Master, what did Kong Jing say to you just now?" Tian Kong Laozu looked at Lu Ping in surprise and said, "You can sense our secret voice transmission just now?" Lu Ping nodded and said, "I can only sense your conversation, but I can't know what you were talking about." Tian Kong Laozu praised, "I didn't expect your divine sense to be no weaker than the old man. No wonder." On the other side of the array formation, after Demon Monarch Kong Jing and the other whale demon passed through the array formation, Demon Monarch Kong Jing looked at the rapidly recovering array formation in silence. The moment the barrier wall recovered, Kong Jing suddenly said, "You don't seem to be convinced?" The giant whale demon behind Kong Jing said, "Father seems to think too highly of Lu Xinping." Kong Jing didn't seem surprised at all. He just said indifferently, "You want to challenge him?" The giant whale demon hesitated for a moment and finally nodded. Demon Monarch Kong Jing walked towards another stronghold. He said coldly, "You're courting death." The giant whale demon's face turned red. Seeing that Demon King Kong Jing was about to break the protective formation, he quickly stepped forward and said, "Even if I'm not Lu Xuanping's match, what about Tian Kong? He's just a man who was lucky enough to live for a few years. With Father's cultivation at the peak of the mid-Dharma stage, you can definitely defeat Tian Kong. How could you let the two of them take the Jade Phosphorus Ghost Fires? Those are two low-grade heaven-level spiritual fires, and they are exactly what the giant whale tribe needs. What do you think?" Kong Jing Laozu stopped the Skyquake hammer he had just taken out and suddenly turned to look at the giant whale demon behind him. He shouted, "If I try to snatch them, you will be the first to die. How many moves do you think you can take from Lu Xinping?" The giant whale demon was stunned by his father's roar and could only stare blankly at the giant whale demon king in front of him. Seeing his son like this, Kong Jing couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This son of mine has been in the deep-sea demon territory for too long. Although his cultivation isn't too bad, it can only be described as not too bad compared to Lu Xinping. His brain is really too simple. It looks like it's time to let him go out and train by himself. Lu Ping controlled the flowing sword to help Tian Kong Laozu expand the small hole in the sixth barrier wall. He said, "From what Kong Jing said, it seems that Ao Dian wants to harm me. But why did he warn me like this? Could it be that the giant whale tribe and the primordial giant crocodile are enemies?" Old ancestor Tian Kong shook his head with a smile and said, "It's not a grudge. It's just that the giant whale demon race has thoughts of replacing him. That's why I said that Demon King Kong Jing's ambition is not small." Lu Ping was surprised. He said, "The giant whale demon tribe is a match for the primordial giant crocodile? Did Demon King Kong Jing discuss this with you, Uncle Master?" Tian Kong Laozu said, "No, this giant whale demon seems to have some kind of detection treasure on him that can detect the traces of the Jade Phosphorus Ghost Fire. Previously, these two came for the Jade Phosphorus Ghost Fire, but we beat them to it. Kong Jing wanted to exchange it with me after this." As he spoke, Laozu's mountain-splitting axe opened a hole in the barrier wall big enough for one person to pass through. He was the first to enter, and Lu Ping followed closely behind. However, just as Laozu stepped into the sixth barrier wall, and Lu Ping was still standing in the fifth barrier wall, two loud explosions sounded from the sixth and fifth barrier wall. Tian Kong Laozu shouted, "Not good, coming quickly." But it was too late. When the two explosions sounded in the two barriers almost simultaneously, Lu Ping already knew that he had fallen into someone else's trap. Sure enough, as soon as Laozu's voice fell, the explosion of spells came from the sixth barrier wall, and the hole in the barrier wall in front of Lu Ping rapidly shrank. Lu Ping looked back and saw Feng Shutao sneering as he rushed out of the broken barrier wall and pounced at Lu Ping. "Feng Shutao, how dare you cooperate with the primordial giant crocodile clan? How will your Xianling sect survive in the North Sea in the future? Will Dao Sheng forgive you?" Tian Kong Laozu's roar came from the sixth barrier wall, but that didn't stop Feng Shutao from walking towards Lu Ping with a sinister smile on his face. But just as Feng Shutao was thinking about how to deal with this disciple that both Lu Tianling and Zhang Tianlin thought highly of, Feng Shutao's expression suddenly changed. A seven-colored light suddenly rose from Lu Ping's left hand, and he slammed his palm on the edge of the hole. The rapidly shrinking hole suddenly began to expand again, but Lu Ping's right hand shone with a six-colored light and slammed it on the hole again, and the hole expanded even faster. Lu Ping lowered his head and jumped through the hole. Feng Shutao's exasperated howl came from behind. Seven-colored restriction-breaking talisman? That's impossible. As soon as Lu Ping passed through the hole, Feng Shutao's attack came one after another. The flowing sword in Lu Ping's hand suddenly turned into countless rays of sword light. Each ray of sword light carried a ray of sword light, and they weaved a huge sword net behind him, firmly blocking the hole in the barrier wall. Crackle, crackle. A series of cracking sounds could be heard. The sword net Lu Ping had set up was easily shattered by Feng Shutao. The aftermath of the spell continued to hit Lu Ping's body. At this moment, Lu Ping didn't even have time to activate his protective magic treasure. There was a muffled hum, and Lu Ping's face turned pale. He flew back, but Lu Ping still managed to block Feng Shutao's attack. Then Lu Ping heard Tian Kong Laozu's roar. Laozu's cry was mixed with the roar. Lu Ping turned around and saw Aodian Laozu rolling on the ground. The huge axe was flying back, and Aodian Laozu looked at the axe flying back to Tian Kong Laozu with a face full of fear. This is impossible. How can you have a second tribulation spirit treasure? Aodian Laozu struggled to get up from the ground. Although Tian Kong Laozu's attack made Aodian Laozu look very miserable, it didn't actually do much damage to him. However, the impact of Tian Kong Laozu's mountain axe was too great. In just one exchange, Aodian Laozu and Feng Shutao's carefully planned ambush failed. Not far away, Feng Shutao was about to enter the barrier that Lu Ping had reopened when he heard Aodian Laozu's roar. What? Second tribulation spirit treasure. Didn't Zhenling only have 4 spirit treasures? When did another one appear? And it's even a second tribulation spirit treasure. Could it be that Tian Xiang Laozu has given all the spirit treasures that Taishan Laozu inherited to Tian Kong? Feng Shutao's feet stopped moving. Without hesitation, Lu Ping charged at Feng Shutao. As long as he could use the formation to block Feng Shutao, the longer he could delay Feng Shutao in the gap, the more likely this ambush plan by Xin Ling sect and the primordial crocodile clan would fail. In fact, Tian Kong Laozu might even be able to turn the tables. It was impossible. When Aodian saw the second tribulation spirit treasure in Tian Kong Laozu's hand, he knew that today's plan was not going to succeed. Even if he could kill Lu Xinping, Tian Kong would lose his restraints. With a second tribulation spirit treasure in his hand, besides Dharma adepts, who else on Lone Peak could stop him? Aodian Laozu didn't even look at Feng Shutao, who was charging at Lu Ping to block the gap. He turned around and jumped into the protective formation that he had broken earlier. He even cast a spell that restored the formation to its original state. Seeing that Aodian had retreated, Tian Kong Laozu immediately retracted his aura and came to the side of the hole that Lu Ping was blocking Feng Shutao from entering. He raised his hand and signaled Lu Ping not to block and let Feng Shutao in. Chapter 903. Aodian Laozu did not feel any pressure when he retreated. He had colluded with the human cultivators to plot against the human cultivators. After all, he was just using them as a tool, and he could even cause internal strife among the human race. There was no need for him to feel guilty about anything. It was really difficult for Feng Shutao, who was still trying his best to attack the barrier entrance that was shrinking under Lu Ping's obstruction. He was still planning to attack Tian Kong Laozu, but he did not know that Aodian Laozu had already disappeared without a trace. Aodian, please wait for a moment. The old man will be here soon. Even though Feng Shutao could only use 50 to 60% of his abilities in front of the barrier entrance, Lu Ping was still in danger under Feng Shutao's attack. Seeing Tian Kong Laozu's signal, Lu Ping began to go easy on Aodian. He pretended to be unable to take it anymore, but he used his divine consciousness to seal the entrance to prevent Feng Shutao from discovering that Aodian had retreated. After hearing Feng Shutao's roar, Lu Ping immediately took advantage of the situation. He stomped on the ground and borrowed the momentum from Feng Shutao's impact to throw himself backward. It looked like he was really sent flying by someone. Feng Shutao was overjoyed and rushed in. He shouted, "Aodian, my friend, The old man is here to help you. But what he saw was Lu Ping's mocking and pitiful expression. The mountain-splitting axe had expanded to 30 feet in the sky, and the blade alone took up 2/3 of its length. Aodian, you've tricked me. Feng Shutao roared in anger. Tian Kong Laozu's attack was already aimed at Feng Shutao, who was caught off guard. Feng Shutao barely managed to use the Happy Rod, a first disaster spiritual treasure that Laozu had given him after he had reached the mid-Dharma stage. Dang! The sound of metal clashing made Lu Ping want to plug his ears. The merry pestle let out a series of whines as it was sent flying away by the axe. Feng Shutao didn't manage to dodge in time, and blood splashed everywhere. His entire left forearm was cut off by the remaining power of the axe, and the dust that was stirred up by the axe covered the entire space. When the dust settled, there was no trace of Feng Shutao in the sixth barrier. All that was left was a pool of blood on the ground and a forearm rolling in the dust. Although the fight had been short, both Tian Kong Laozu and Lu Ping had consumed a large amount of their true origin energy and magic power. Now that the summit of the Lone Peak was right in front of them, they knew that sharpening one's axe wouldn't delay the work of cutting firewood. So, they took elixirs in the stronghold and held spirit stones in their hands to recover. Perhaps it was because when Aodian Laozu and Feng Shutao had set up the trap, they didn't take out the treasures in the sixth layer's formation space to make it look more realistic. At least, Lu Ping and Tian Kong Laozu were relieved to see the spirit sealing box, which had been knocked to the ground by the great fight but hadn't been broken. Tian Kong Laozu opened the spirit sealing box, and his eyes lit up. Then, under Lu Ping's curious gaze, he threw one of the items into Lu Ping's hands and said, "Let's keep these 2 items for ourselves. One for each of us." Lu Ping took the item that looked like a scroll. It seemed to be a charm, but Lu Ping didn't know what it was. So, he looked at Tian Kong Laozu with an inquisitive look. Tian Kong Laozu was pouring his true origin energy into the same scroll. Tian Kong Laozu saw that Lu Ping didn't know what it was, so he explained, "This is called a cloning charm. You only need to pour your true origin energy into it and activate it with your divine will. Then, you can turn it into an outer body clone with the same appearance as you. Although it doesn't have intelligence and can only attack crazily, and it doesn't have any magical power, it can be a good shield in a crisis. It can save your life." Lu Ping looked at the talisman in his hand with surprise. The blue-purple true origin in his hand surged out, and he poured his own true origin into the talisman. Although the clone talisman could only be used once and had many restrictions, it was still a life-saving technique. Furthermore, judging from the 7-colored light on the surface of the talisman, the value of this clone talisman was most likely not inferior to that of the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman. Because of the battle just now and the refining of this cloning charm, a lot of time had passed. After the 2 of them recovered, they began to break the 7th barrier. This was the last barrier on Lonely Peak. After breaking the 7th barrier, they would reach the top of Lonely Peak. In the 7th barrier, Lu Ping and Tian Kong Laozu had just put away a spirit-raising magic weapon. Lu Ping seemed to hear something and hesitated slightly. Tian Kong Laozu saw this and asked, "What's wrong? Did you find something?" Lu Ping nodded and patted his chest. Linglong's wine cauldron flew out of the core space. Tian Kong Laozu saw this wine cauldron was a novelty, but he was not surprised. He said, "This is the spirit treasure wine cauldron you subdued in Ingtian Dojo?" Linglong was well behaved. She knew that the person in front of her was a powerful cultivator. She stood up on the edge of the wine cauldron and said, "Linglong greets Laozu." Lu Ping knew that they had wasted enough time. So he asked, "Linglong, did you find anything?" Linglong reached out and patted, and the wine cauldron fell from mid-air. After a while, Lu Ping and Tian Kong Laozu both noticed the abnormality below. "I didn't expect there to be a mineral vein here." When Tian Kong Laozu saw Linglong's wine cauldron fall to the ground, he immediately noticed the movement of the earth veins under his feet. Tian Kong Laozu cultivated the 5th Earth True Body technique, which was one of the 5 true skills of Jinling, so he was extremely sensitive to the changes of the earth veins. Soon, he found that there was a mini mineral vein hidden in the ground under his feet. Lu Ping explained with a smile, Linglong is not actually doing this for this mineral vein. She can use this mineral vein to explore the direction of the Lone Peak's earth veins. From there, she can determine the location of the Lone Peak's spirit vein, and to a certain extent, exert influence on the spirit vein. The earth veins often formed a huge underground network underground. Whether it was the spirit vein, the spirit stone vein, or the spirit material vein, they were all inextricably linked to the earth veins. Linglong could directly trace the direction of the earth veins through these extended relationships, and to a certain extent, she could also sort out the earth veins. Tian Kong Laozu immediately understood that Lu Ping was thinking about the large spirit vein in the Lone Peak. At this time, Linglong suddenly climbed out of the wine cauldron and said, "Ah, Debao seems to have found the spirit vein, but he himself is trapped by the broken restriction formation deep underground." Lu Ping was shocked and said, "How is it? Is there any danger?" Linglong frowned and said, "I'll try." After saying that, the whole wine cauldron began to rotate above the ground, and below the wine cauldron was the location of the mini mineral vein. Lu Ping's divine sense could only go down a few dozen feet with the earth vein, and then it could not go any further. However, Tian Kong Laozu's face was full of surprise. When Lu Ping looked down, he saw that the part of Tian Kong Laozu's feet that was in contact with the ground had been covered by a layer of yellow fifth earth true essence. In just a moment, Linglong breathed a sigh of relief and climbed out and said, "Thanks to Laozu's help, Linglong and Debao also has a three-colored restriction-breaking talisman on him. He has broken free from the broken restriction formation." Lu Ping breathed a sigh of relief, but then he heard Linglong said, "Someone on the Lone Peak has reached the peak first." As soon as Linglong's voice fell, a deafening sound of metal suddenly exploded. Dang! Linglong, who was clinging to the edge, fell into the wine cauldron, and even Tian Kong Laozu and Lu Ping were shocked by the sudden sound of the bell. Fortunately, both of them were extraordinary cultivators. Tian Kong Laozu was the first to wake up, and then Lu Ping also shook his head hard. The sea bell has been rung. Tian Kong Laozu held the mountain-splitting axe in his hand tightly and walked towards the seventh layer of the barrier. Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "Martial uncle, since the sea bell has been rung, it proves that there is more than one clan that issued the sea bell. I'm afraid the sea bell has already caused a fight, so we don't have to worry." Tian Kong Laozu nodded and said, "Even so, we have to be here, or we won't even be qualified to covet the sea bell." Rumble. The mountain-splitting axe fiercely smashed towards the seventh layer of the barrier, and Lu Ping's flowing sword followed closely behind. But this time, both of them left a way out, as they were afraid that they would be surrounded by the people on the peak the moment they broke through the barrier. Although the seventh layer of the barrier was stronger than the previous few layers, for the two of them, it was only a matter of time. However, just as the two of them broke through the barrier, dang! Another loud sound rang out. This time, Tian Kong Laozu and Lu Ping were prepared, but they still had a splitting headache from the sound of the bell. The sound of the bell was too coincidental, and Tian Kong Laozu and Lu Ping did not dare to be careless. They endured the waves of attacks from their divine senses and took out the mountain-splitting axe and fated person in autumn waters. Unexpectedly, no one took the opportunity to enter the barrier to launch a sneak attack. On the contrary, on the peak outside the barrier, the roar of the chaotic battle became louder. Tian Kong Laozu was the first to walk out of the barrier, and Lu Ping followed closely behind. In the middle of the peak, a huge bronze bell was suspended in the air. The huge body of the bell was engraved with countless mysterious runes and wave-like carvings. It was the legendary sea bell. At this time, fighting around the sea bell were Dong Yi Laozu of the Blue Sea Sect, Ao Jian Laozu of the Primordial Giant Crocodile Clan, Demon King Kong Jing of the Giant Whale Demon Clan, and Hai Hun Laozu of the Sea Flame Sect. The four mid-Dharma Laozu were fighting together, and each of them had a first tribulation spiritual treasure in their hands. In terms of cultivation, Demon King Kong Jing was the most profound, but in terms of strength, Dong Yi Laozu of the Blue Sea Sect was the first to reach the peak with the Sea Transferring Order, and was the first to ring the sea bell. Through the Sea Transferring Order and the Changlu Sword, he had already gained some support from the sea. Hai Hun Laozu had an easy journey. Even though he did not have the thin water sword, nor did he have the full preparation of the demon clan, nor did he have the powerful spiritual treasure of Zhenling, he was the third person to reach the peak. At that time, Aodian had already fought with Dong Yi Laozu. Even though Hai Hun Laozu also coveted the Sea Bell at this time, he had no choice but to join forces with Dong Yi Laozu in an attempt to expel Aodian. Unexpectedly, at this time, Kong Jing Laozu suddenly attacked, and the whole scene suddenly became chaotic. Kong Jing Laozu took advantage of the chaos to ring the Sea Bell. To everyone's surprise, Patriarch Kong Jing also gained part of the Songhai Bell's recognition, and he rang the bell for the second time. Chapter 904. Among the three treasures of the Songhai, only the Songhai Bell was Laozu's natal spiritual treasure. Half of the reason why the three treasures of the Songhai were so famous was due to the Songhai Bell. Among the three treasures of the Songhai, the Sea Transfer Token was good at attacking, the Cloud Sail was good at defending, and only the Songhai Bell was really good at attacking and defending. However, what really made the Songhai Bell famous was the battle when Mara besieged the Songhai sect more than 10,000 years ago. After the establishment of the Songhai sect, Laozu wandered in the North Sea. His whereabouts were always uncertain. All the affairs of the Songhai sect were taken care of by his friends and followers, but he rarely cared about the situation of the Songhai sect. After that, the calamity of Mo Luo broke out. At that time, the calamity of Mo Luo targeted the newly established Azure Sea sect. The Songhai sect was in an emergency. The cultivators of the Songhai sect had no choice but to ask Songhai Laozu for help and ignite the talisman left by Songhai Laozu. When Songhai Laozu received the news, the Songhai sect was already in danger. At the critical moment, Songhai Laozu came from overseas alone. With the Cloud Sail as defense and the Sea Transfer Token as attack, he used the thin water long stream sword to kill all the way through Mars encirclement and return to the Songhai sect. The morale of the Songhai sect was greatly boosted. In this battle, there were 5 or 6 blood Mara and above that died in the hands of Songhai Laozu, and there were countless other major and minor repairs. However, not only was the encirclement of Mara not lifted, but more and more reinforcements surrounded the Songhai sect even tighter. Just when the Songhai sect began to be filled with an atmosphere of helplessness, Songhai Laozu made a move again. The huge Songhai Bell floated above the sect protection array of the Songhai sect. Just when the Songhai sect and Mara who surrounded the Songhai sect were at a loss, the Songhai Bell suddenly rang. Dang! The loud sound shook almost 1,000 miles. A ripple visible to the naked eye spread out from the center of the ocean bell. All the Azuras who probed the sea bell with their divine senses were all shaken by the sudden ringing of the sea bell, and their divine senses were all injured. The more serious ones even turned into idiots, and some even bled to death from their 7 orifices. However, this was not what Sin was afraid of. The most terrifying thing was the reaction of the demonic cultivators hidden among the Azuras when the sea bell rang. Mara was originally one body, but the number of demonic cultivators was usually far less than the Azura. However, the damage caused by demonic cultivators was not much less than the Azura, and the true reason why demonic cultivators were able to cause fear in the cultivation world was because of their insane innate ability to devour souls. Devil cultivators were born with tyrannical soul remembrance and were extremely aggressive. They often killed people without even realizing it. Moreover, they were often the eyes and ears of the Shura, and could often cause the Shura to display several times the damage. Be it human or demon cultivators, when faced with the soul-devouring abilities of fiendish cultivators or blood fiends, they would usually choose to retreat. In all the previous disasters of Mara, the demonic cultivators did not cause as much damage as the Azuras, but the fear they caused was far greater than the demonic cultivators. However, the moment the sea bell rang, the ones who suffered the most were not the Azuras, but the demonic cultivators hiding among the Azuras. Countless sharp screams came one after another, and the black fog that wrapped around the demonic cultivators collapsed in midair. Within a radius of 30 miles, almost no demonic cultivators survived, including 3 blood Shuras and 1 jade Shura. Dang! The second sea bell rang, and within a radius of 50 miles, only 2 jade demonic cultivators escaped with serious injuries. As for the remaining 5 blood demonic cultivators, 3 of their heads exploded on the spot, and the remaining 2 died silently. Dang! When the third sea bell rang, within a radius of 100 miles, hundreds of ordinary demonic cultivators were killed or injured. In addition to the number of dead and injured Shuras, after the third sea bell rang, the tens of thousands of Mara cultivators who had besieged the Blue Sea sect for nearly a month collapsed on the spot, and the siege of the Blue Sea sect was easily resolved by Ocean Laozu in such a shocking way. However, the strange thing was that although the Sea Bell was a powerful First Calamity spiritual treasure, it should not have such a strong power. Ocean Laozu had also fought with others, but the Sea Bell had never exerted such great power again. It was not until Ocean Laozu fought with Mara several times that the Sea Bell finally regained its power in the Blue Sea sect when facing demonic cultivators. Only then did Ocean Laozu realize that the originally strong power of the Sea Bell was actually directed towards demonic cultivators. In the process of forging his own natal spiritual treasure, Ocean Laozu might have added some strange spiritual materials, or he might have unintentionally catered to some secret recipe. In short, the Sea Bell possessed a special technique that could cause great harm to demonic cultivators, and even Ocean Laozu himself could not explain the reason for this mutation. After the Battle of the Blue Sea sect, in order to resist the calamity of Mara, the cultivation world of the North Sea once had a craze of forging clock-type magic treasures. However, there had never been a treasure like the Sea Bell. Because of this, the value of the Sea Bell was even more obvious. Unfortunately, Ocean Laozu's whereabouts were uncertain. In the end, no one knew where he went, and the Sea Bell also disappeared with him until Ocean Laozu's cave abode rose strangely from the bottom of the Earth Island. As Ocean Laozu's natal spiritual treasure, the Sea Bell was naturally not something that anyone could ring. The Blue Sea sect, where Dongi Laozu came from, regarded itself as the inheritor of Ocean Laozu. It also had the Sea Transferring Token, one of the 3 treasures of the sea, and Ocean Laozu's usual flying sword, the Thin Water Sword, could ring the Sea Bell was naturally not surprising. However, Kong Jing Laozu could also ring the Sea Bell. What was going on? Dongi Laozu looked at Kong Jing Laozu with a livid face. The Sea Transferring Token in his hand led several streams of water in the void, rushing towards Kong Jing Laozu from different directions. Kong Jing Laozu laughed loudly. With the Skyquake hammer in his hand, he countered without showing any signs of weakness. The two immediately fell into a stalemate. Ao Jian Laozu and Hai Hun Laozu saw that Dongi Laozu and Kong Jing Laozu were suddenly fighting without a care in the world. Unexpectedly, the two tacitly did not make a move. Instead, they hit the Sea Bell floating in the sky at the same time. Poof, poof, 2 muffled sounds were heard. Although the Sea Bell was continuously shaken by the two's continuous attacks, the sound was not like a bell being struck. It was more like a fart. Ao Jian Laozu turned to Kong Jing, who was fighting with Dongi Laozu, and said, "Kong-san, what is going on? How can you ring the Sea Bell?" Kong Jing laughed and said, "This is no secret. Sea Laozu is a senior of my giant whale demon clan. The Sea sect is a natal spiritual treasure that Sea Laozu painstakingly refined. As a descendant of the giant whale demon clan, I am naturally qualified to inherit the Sea Bell." What? Sea Laozu was actually a demon clan cultivator, and a giant whale demon clan cultivator at that? Not only Ao Dian Laozu and Hai Hun Laozu, but even Tian Kong Laozu and Lu Ping, who had just entered the mountain peak from the stronghold, were also in disbelief. The founder of the Sea sect, Laozu, was actually a demon cultivator. Could there be a bigger joke in the North Sea cultivation world than this? Almost everyone's eyes were on Dongi Laozu, who was fighting with Dongi Laozu. Dongi Laozu's face was livid, and the spiritual treasure in his hand was being wielded more and more fiercely, but he did not refute Kong Jing. Hai Hun Laozu hesitated for a moment, but still asked, "Daoist Dongi, is Kong Demon King's words false?" Dongi Laozu's face was so gloomy that it was about to drip water. He looked at Kong Jing Laozu coldly and said, "My sect's ancestral spiritual treasure is not something you can lay a finger on." Dongi Laozu did not directly answer Hai Hun Laozu's question, but everyone present was smart and had already believed most of Kong Jing Laozu's words. Ao Dian Laozu suddenly turned around and asked, Kong San, did you also reveal to him about the Sea sect's ancestral spiritual treasure? Kong Jing Laozu denied and said, Taoist Ao, please be careful with your words. I did not know about the Sea sect's ancestral spiritual treasure beforehand. Ao Dian Laozu said angrily, Bullsh *t. If you did not deliberately tell your son when he was passing by, how would he know about the ancestral spiritual treasure? Kong Jing's face changed, and he said, Ao Chuang dared to pry into our clan's secret. Taoist Ao Dian, is this Ao Chuang's idea alone, or the primordial giant crocodile clan's idea? Ao Dian Laozu was stunned. He did not expect Kong Jing to unintentionally use his words against him. He could only say angrily, You were the one who did not pay attention to your words, and others heard it. Who can you blame for this? Demon King Kong Jing snorted coldly and jumped up to ring the sea bell again, but he was held back by Dongi Laozu. Although Demon King Kong Jing's strength was slightly better than Dongi Laozu, there was a limit to his strength. In front of Dongi Laozu's mutually destructive fighting style, his hands and feet were tied. Although the sea bell could not be sounded by anyone other than the Sea sect and the giant whale demon clan, it did not mean that the sea bell could not be subdued by outsiders. It was just that the difficulty of subduing it was higher than the difficulty of these two. Tian Kong Laozu was about to enter the battlefield with the mountain-splitting axe in his hand, but Lu Ping unexpectedly grabbed his sleeve and said, Grandmaster, please wait. Now is not a good time to intervene. Tian Kong Laozu was a little confused and said, If we don't intervene now, I'm afraid the sea bell will be taken by others. Lu Ping gestured towards the group of four and said, Grand Marshal Uncle, I'm afraid these people already know that you have a second tribulation spirit treasure. In terms of strength, I'm afraid Grand Marshal Uncle is the strongest. However, none of them can do anything to each other. If you intervene now, they will definitely join forces to deal with you first. Lu Ping nodded and said, Grand Marshal Uncle, I'm afraid these people already know that you have a second tribulation spirit treasure. Tian Kong Laozu pondered for a moment and suddenly asked with a smile, Boy, do you have any plans? Lu Ping chuckled and said, Anyway, no one is willing to let Grand Marshal Uncle obtain the ocean bell. It's not only because you're obviously stronger than the others, but also because no one here is willing to see the sect's strength grow any further. If Grand Marshal Uncle forcefully interferes, you'll definitely be surrounded and attacked. So, why don't we go and take the spirit vein first? Lu Ping smiled and said, No matter what, no one is willing to let you obtain the ocean bell. Tian Kong Laozu said in a low voice, It is not just these few people who have entered the sea treasure. The other sects and the demon clan have not shown themselves yet. So it seems that there are even more people who want to take this spirit vein. Lu Ping said in a small voice, Grandmaster, you have forgotten that we have a spy on the inside. Together with Linglong's strength, even if this spirit vein cannot be completely taken by our sect, we can still get a large portion. Tian Kong Laozu slapped his forehead and said, That's right, that spirit-seeking mouse of yours. Chapter 905. Dongi Laozu, Kong Jing Laozu, Ao Dian Laozu, and Hai Hun Laozu, who were in the midst of a chaotic battle, saw that Tian Kong Laozu and Lu Ping had only stopped nearby for a short while before leaving. The four of them heaved a sigh of relief at the same time. The power of a second tribulation spiritual treasure was simply too great. Where did Zhenling obtain this second tribulation spiritual treasure? It was rumored that Zhenling only had 4 spiritual treasures throughout the tens of thousands of years of history. However, among these 4 spiritual treasures, only the one that Tian Xiang Laozu controlled was a second tribulation spiritual treasure. The other 3 were all first tribulation spiritual treasures. Where did the spiritual treasure in Tian Kang's hands come from? Although Kong Jing Laozu and Ao Dian Laozu were plotting against each other just now, at this moment, they looked at each other. The increase in Zhenling's power was equivalent to the increase in the power of the human practitioners. The increase in the power of the human practitioners actually meant that the power of the demon clan was relatively weaker. On the other hand, Dongi Laozu and Hai Hun Laozu knew that when the various sects of the North Sea were excavating the Yingtian temple, Jiang Tianlin had forcibly taken away a spiritual treasure. However, the original form of the spiritual treasure was a wine cup. With one look, they could tell that it was a first tribulation spiritual treasure. It was completely different from the one in Tian Kong Laozu's hands. However, didn't this mean that Jinling already had 6 spiritual treasures, and 2 of them were second tribulation spiritual treasures? Dongi Laozu and Hai Hun Laozu also looked at each other worriedly. Jinling's increasing power had caused these 2 sects to feel a deep sense of danger. How confident are you? Tian Kong Laozu asked Lu Ping as he walked towards the back of the lone peak. In the distance, there were 2 consecutive sounds of the protective barrier being broken. This meant that at least 2 more mid-Dharma adepts had entered the peak. Lu Ping did not directly answer Tian Kong Laozu's question. Instead, he said, "There are already people at the source of the spiritual vein. They seem to be setting up a great array to guide the spiritual vein." Tian Kong Laozu's heart tightened, and he said, "Leave quickly." Just as they were about to reach the source of the spirit vein, Tian Kong Laozu suddenly raised his hand and stopped. Just as Lu Ping was wondering what was going on, a chaotic battle suddenly broke out at the source of the spirit vein. Lu Ping was stunned. His luck was too bad. Could it be that this trip to the vast sea inheritance was going to be fruitless? Angry roars and curses came from afar. Lu Ping and Tian Kong Laozu were both stunned and thought to themselves, "Feng Shutao is there too?" At this moment, the 2 of them moved their divine sense and tacitly hid their auras in a small forest beside them. Immediately after, a beam of light flashed across the sky and descended towards the small forest. It was none other than Feng Shutao. At this moment, Feng Shutao was in an extremely sorry state. Not only was his entire left arm missing, but the merry pestle around him was also moving up and down. It was obvious that the inner yuan in Feng Shutao's body was in turmoil. It seemed that this fellow had suffered at the source of the spirit vein again. Without another word, Tian Kong Laozu picked up the mountain-splitting axe and swung it at Feng Shutao. By the time Feng Shutao realized that something was wrong, the mountain-splitting axe had already reverted to its original size of 3 feet in midair. Feng Shutao looked like he had seen a ghost. However, this time was not like the time when he was in the protective barrier. Feng Shutao turned around and ran, but he was hit in the middle of his back by a misty white light. Feng Shutao suddenly realized that the inner yuan in his body had suddenly calmed down. He was a little happy at first, but he realized that the inner yuan had completely calmed down. Even if he wanted to use it, he could not. Feng Shutao panicked and used his cultivation method with all his might. The layer of white light covering his body peeled off like chips. Feng Shutao immediately felt that his body had returned to its original state. However, the inner yuan in his body had suddenly become turbulent again. This was even worse than when his inner yuan had been in a state of turbulence. Pucci, for streams of blood flowed out from his nose and ears, but Feng Shutao did not have the time to care about that. Even though it had only been a split second since he was hit by Lu Ping's White Lotus Misty Light, that split second was enough for the mountain-splitting axe to once again bring Feng Shutao within its attack range. Feng Shidao was so scared that his soul almost flew out of his body. The wound on his left arm, which had already stopped bleeding, suddenly sprayed out a stream of blood. Feng Shidao looked even weaker and paler than before, but he took advantage of the blood to cast the blood escape secret art. He blocked the mountain-splitting axe for a moment with his staff, allowing Feng Shidao to escape the attack's range. Even so, the light brought about by the mountain-splitting axe had already sliced through the protective aura around Feng Shidao. Feng Shidao spat out a mouthful of blood, and the speed of his blood escape instantly doubled. A moment later, he crashed into the protective wall of the formation. Tian Kong Laozu looked at the protective barrier, which was still shaking but not damaged at all, and said, "So this protective barrier is only meant for people who go up the mountain. If you go down the mountain and go in the opposite direction, it will be fine." No wonder Feng Shutao and Ao Dian were able to join forces to attack us. These 2 must have secretly worked together to break through the barrier and get ahead of us. Lu Ping could not help but feel a little dejected when he saw that he had not been able to kill Feng Shutao this time. However, Tian Kong Laozu laughed and said, "How can a mid-Dharma adept be killed so easily? To be able to severely injure Feng Shutao this time was already beyond my expectations. Previously, when Feng Shutao and Ao Dian joined forces, the one they really wanted to kill was you." Seeing that Lu Ping was deep in thought, Tian Kong Laozu continued, "However, Feng Shutao will definitely not have it easy this time. The light from the numinous artifact pierced his body, and it will probably take him at least 10 years to recover. Furthermore, he had one of his arms chopped off earlier. Even if the injuries he suffered are not as severe as the old man's, they have at least damaged his core, which has ruined his last hope of advancing to the late Dharma stage." Lu Ping and Tian Kong Laozu saw that Feng Shutao had escaped and knew that they would not be able to catch up to him even if they chased after him. Thus, the two of them headed towards the source of the spirit vein. Previously, the two of them had tried to kill Feng Shutao, and it was likely that the people there had heard the commotion. However, they did not know if the two of them would end up like Feng Shutao. "Are you Taoist Tian Kong?" A gentle voice came from the source of the spirit vein. Tian Kong Laozu was taken aback and said, "Brother Yujin, why are you here?" As they spoke, Tian Kong Laozu and Lu Ping had already arrived at the source of the spirit vein. There were more than 10 practitioners there, and there were humans and demons. There were also 4 Dharma adepts, and one of them was the leader of the Yujin sect, Laozu Yujin Laozu. "Brother Yujin, why didn't you fight for the vast ocean bell, and instead came here?" Songhai Laozu glanced at the 2 demon Dharma adepts at the side. One was at the mid-Dharma stage, while the other was only at the early Dharma stage. Although the entry to the vast ocean treasure this time had stipulated that each clan was only allowed to send 1 mid-Dharma adept and 1 core forging disciple, some clans were obviously not strong enough and could only send out early Dharma adepts. It seemed that this demon practitioner was the demon king of one of the weaker clans, and the other mid-Dharma human adept did not belong to any of the major clans, but was a famous lone practitioner in the North Sea, known as Xianglu Laozu. Yujin Laozu laughed and said, "It's a fierce battle there, and I'm not strong enough. Even if I get the vast ocean bell, I'll be a target for everyone, so I don't want to get involved." Besides, even with Brother Tian Kang's power as a second tribulation spirit treasure, he didn't fight for the vast ocean bell, let alone a small clan like the Yujin sect. "I might as well come here and get some benefits first." Mara's calamity was growing day by day, and the vast ocean bell was used to ward off Mara's calamity and protect the sect's legacy. But Yujin Laozu had given up on it without hesitation. Even Tian Kong Laozu had been persuaded by Lu Ping at that time, and he had only made this decision after much hesitation. Such decisiveness had really impressed Lu Ping. Lu Ping looked down at the ground. The spirit veins were bound by the veins of the earth. Because the lone peak was narrow, the source of the spirit veins was more concentrated, unlike when Lu Ping was at the peak of Failing Mountain, where the spirit veins were unusually scattered. On the ground, there was a huge, unfinished guiding formation, which actually covered more than half of the spirit veins on the peak. Seeing that Lu Ping and Tian Kong Laozu were looking at the guiding formation, Yujin Laozu smiled and explained, "The spirit vein on this lone peak is indeed a large spirit vein, and this large spirit vein is about the size of 15 medium spirit veins. Previously, Xianling sect's Feng Shutao arrived first, so he used the formation to encircle 10 medium spirit veins, which happened to be a complete large spirit vein. After that, many Taoists from various sects and demon cultivators arrived one after another. This Feng Shutao was quite an interesting fellow. Relying on the fact that he came first, he refused to let go of the 10 medium spirit veins and demanded a share of the remaining 5 medium spirit veins. In the end, he incurred the wrath of the crowd, so we had no choice but to work together and expel him." Old ancestor Tian Kong and Lu Ping scolded Feng Shutao in their hearts when they heard that. In front of so many heroes, a person who had lost an arm and his strength was greatly reduced still wanted to take everything for himself. One had to admit that Xianling sect had been arrogant for thousands of years in the North Sea, thinking that everyone should give in to them. Little did they know that Xianling sect was already on the decline, and only Dao Sheng Laozu's name was left to deter the sects in the North Sea. Otherwise, Xinling sect might not even be as strong as Songhai sect. At this time, Shanglo Laozu suddenly said, Flying Feather sect's fellow Taoist Huayu was also here. But when we surrounded Feng Shutao, he left on his own. Shanglo Laozu's meaning was very clear. He hoped that Xinling would not hog all the spirit veins like Xinling sect did. Tian Kong Laozu laughed and said, Our sect is not as greedy as Xinling sect. We only want 5 of the mid-sized spirit veins. As soon as Tian Kong Laozu finished speaking, the faces of the crowd changed again. However, Xinling was not like Xinling sect. That was the true number 1 sect in the North Sea. The mid-Dharma stage demon cultivator was not like the human cultivators. He was the first to jump out and said, Xinling is not a good person either. What right does Xinling have to hog 1/3 of the spirit veins in the vast sea treasure? Tian Kong Laozu's face changed. He said, Because of this. With that, he swung the mountain-splitting axe in his hand at the mid-Dharma stage demon cultivator. Chapter 906. How powerful was a second disaster spirit treasure? The mid-Dharma demon cultivator in front of him, who also wielded the only first disaster spirit treasure of his race, clearly had a deep understanding of this. With just 3 strikes, he was already at a complete disadvantage, and he could only use all his skills to defend himself. The other early Dharma demon king who had come with this demon cultivator was about to step forward to help, but unexpectedly, a pair of flying swords had already been handed over to Tiankong Laozu the moment he attacked. Lu Ping had condensed the 6 sets of sword techniques of the North Sea Wave listening technique into a brand new magic talisman in the Danxia Purple Aura. In addition, Lu Ping had refined the Thunder Calamity Water to push his level of training to the peak of the core forging stage. His abilities had more than doubled. Otherwise, he would not have been able to kill the early Dharma primordial fierce crocodile with just 1 strike. Lu Ping's earlier surprise attack had given him the upper hand, and he had forced the Demon King to retreat. When the Demon King saw clearly that the person he was fighting was Lu Xinping, who had recently become very famous in the North Sea training world, he was also shocked, and for some reason, he began to panic. It was just that this early Dharma Demon King was obviously not someone that the unintelligent primordial fierce crocodile could compare to. Although this person's race was not considered prominent, and he had entered the Dharma stage later than the Golden Serpent Island Lord, he was still a well-known member of the Demon Clan, and his level of training was not considered weak among the demon cultivators of the same level. After withstanding Lu Ping's storm-like attacks, the Demon King was also embarrassed into anger. Although the person in front of him had a fierce reputation for defeating and even killing Dharma adepts of a higher level, it did not mean that every early Dharma adept could be trampled on by him. The Demon King roared angrily, and with a special magic, he directly hit Lu Ping's beautiful Autumn Dew sword so hard that it almost flew out of his hand. Lu Ping didn't expect the Demon King in front of him to be someone who had mastered the innate great divine ability. He almost failed miserably. Lu Ping's recent challenges against Dharma adepts had been too smooth, so smooth that he had almost forgotten himself. If not for the fact that he had advanced to the pinnacle of the core forging stage, this unknown Dharma Demon King in front of him might have even used his special ability to injure Lu Ping. Lu Ping's divine sense was strong, so he quickly controlled the twin flying swords from afar. Then, he unleashed more than 100 sword strikes to nullify the Monster King's innate great skill. However, the Monster King managed to regain the upper hand. Now, both sides were back on the same starting line. The Monster King roared angrily, and a huge seahorse avatar floated in the air, glaring at Lu Ping like a tiger watching its prey. Help me, I agree with what Brother Tiankong has said. Lu Ping and the Demon King were both stunned. When they turned to look, they saw that the battle between Tiankong Laozu and the mid-Dharma Demon King had already ended. From the Demon King's slightly disheveled expression, it was obvious that he had been defeated by Tiankong Laozu. When the Demon King looked behind Lu Ping, he did not know when the Jade Sword sect's Jade Sword Laozu was already standing in a position to help Lu Ping. It was obvious that if Lu Ping showed any signs of losing, Jade Sword Laozu would step in to help. The Demon King glared fiercely at Lu Ping, his eyes burning with the desire to fight. However, in the end, he had no choice but to retreat to where the mid-Dharma Demon King was. Tian Kong Laozu smiled and nodded in the direction of Jade Sword Laozu. Jade Sword Laozu also smiled and walked back to the position he had occupied earlier. Since Brother Ranliang has no objections, these 5 medium spirit veins will be taken by our sect. Tian Kong Laozu said to Jade Sword Laozu, Brother Jade Sword, how many do you intend to take? Jade Sword Laozu turned and looked into the distance. Another 2 Dharma adepts were rushing over. He understood Tian Kong Laozu's good intentions, so he smiled and said, 2. I only need 2 medium spirit veins. 2 demon kings had yielded. Jade Sword Laozu was obviously in cahoots with Zhenling. The lone practitioner, Laozu Xianglu, naturally did not want to offend these 2 sections. Seeing this, he smiled and said, I am just a lone practitioner. I only need 1 medium spirit vein. Even Huayu Laozu, who had returned with Ling Gu sect's Nanyun Laozu, could only watch unwillingly as Zhenling began to set up the spirit drawing formation, drawing all 5 medium spirit veins into the formation. At this time, another mid-Dharma adept had also rushed over. It was Chongming's sect Santan Laozu. With Jade Sword Laozu and Tian Kong Laozu as support, they also drew 2 medium spirit veins. Just like that, Zhenling's side alone had 9 medium spirit veins. Of the remaining 6, Xianglu Laozu had 1, Huayu Laozu had 1, Nanyun Laozu had 1, and the 2 demon kings had 3. As for the core forging adepts, in front of these Dharma adepts, they did not have the slightest bit of weight. They were like children without the support of adults. They could only watch as the other sects divided up the benefits. Tian Kong Laozu looked at Lu Ping. Seeing that Lu Ping had nodded, he then turned to Jade Sword Laozu and Santan Laozu, who had already finished setting up the drawing formation, and said, My 2 friends, please go ahead first. I will activate the formation later. Santan Laozu had a puzzled look on his face, but he heard Jade Sword Laozu say, That's good too. We will first draw this spirit vein away. As the earth shook and the mountains swayed, the 4 medium spirit veins began to move continuously through the earth veins. In an instant, they had already left the spirit vein on the lone peak. However, it was unknown how long it would take for these 4 spirit veins to reach the mountain gates of Yujin sect and Chongming sect. And the drawing formation that was set up between the 2 sects would also consume more resources as time passed. Zhenling drew the most spirit veins, so it would take the longest time to activate the drawing formation, not to mention the time it would take for the spirit veins to move in the earth veins. At this time, Xianglu Laozu also began to activate the drawing formation. The other sects were also nearing the end of setting up the drawing formation. When old ancestor Tian Kong saw this, he placed the 5 supreme-grade spirit stones in the center of the guiding formation according to the positions of the 5 spirit veins. The entire formation was instantly activated and started to circulate the formation with a commotion that was even more terrifying than when Jade Sword sect and Chongming sect activated the formation. At this time, the other sects also began to activate their drawing formation. Amidst the loud rumbling sounds, Lu Ping stood there motionlessly. If someone were to pay close attention to his face, they would see that rays of light blue light flashed across his face, and Lu Ping's entire face looked darker and darker. The entire lone peak shook for nearly 10 minutes before it gradually calmed down. Although the entire peak, which was originally full of spirit qi, was still filled with extremely thick spirit qi, this spirit qi was like water without a source, a tree without roots. Without the support of the spirit veins, this spirit qi would eventually dissipate between heaven and earth. Huayu Laozu of the Feiyu sect and Nanyun Laozu of the Linggu sect left in a hurry after the spirit veins were activated. After that, the 2 demon kings also left quietly. Xianglu Laozu, on the other hand, greeted Tian Kong Laozu and the others. Tian Kong Laozu was naturally very polite to Xianglu Laozu, a Dharma adept who was born as a rogue practitioner. Only Yujin Laozu and Santan Laozu were left. The 2 of them seemed to have something to discuss with Tian Kong Laozu. Brother Tian Kong, are you not interested in the sea bell? Santan Laozu saw that Yujin Laozu had spoken first, so he said directly, Brother Tian Kong, if the 3 of us join forces, there is a high possibility that we can compete with the others. Tian Kong Laozu laughed bitterly and said, "This time, I'm afraid I'll have to implicate the two of you." As he said that, he told the two of them about Lu Ping's analysis. He said, "I didn't expect that this time. I brought a second tribulation spiritual treasure, but I became the target of everyone." Now, whether it is the Demon Clan or the Blue Sea sect, the other cultivators, they don't want the Sea Bell to fall into the hands of our sect. If the two of you appear with me, we will definitely face attacks from both the Demon Clan and the Human Clan. Yujin Laozu and Santan Laozu both felt that it was a pity. However, it seemed that the two of them had not given up and still wanted to try their luck. After bidding farewell to Tian Kong Laozu and Santan, they headed towards the direction where the battle was going on. After the two of them left, old ancestor Tian Kang's calm and composed expression changed. He hurriedly walked to Lu Ping's side and asked, "How is it? Did something happen to you, brat?" Lu Ping pulled the corner of his mouth and revealed an ugly smile. He said, "Fortunately, I managed to trick these people. Fortunately, I didn't attack the Jade Sword sect and the Chongming sect too severely. Otherwise, I would not have been able to hold on and would have been exposed in front of everyone." Tian Kong Laozu heaved a long sigh of relief and scolded with a smile. "You little brat, don't pretend to be innocent after getting the benefits. In this world of cultivation, how many people can use a spiritual treasure at the core forging stage? And how many people can exert the full power of a spiritual treasure at the core forging stage?" After saying that, Tian Kong Laozu changed his previous scolding expression and asked with a smile, "How was it? How many benefits did you get this time?" Lu Ping swallowed a rejuvenation pill and said with a smile, "I didn't expect that Linglong could be so powerful. There were 3 spiritual veins from the Monster Clan, 1 each from Feiyu and Linggu, and 1 from Xianglu Laozu, a rogue cultivator. There were 6 spiritual veins in total, and Linglong intercepted half of them. After all, the Jade Sword sect and the Chongming sect are allies of our sect. So, Linglong showed mercy and only intercepted 1 spiritual vein in total. The rest of the spiritual veins had already been sent to the main drawing formation of our sect when the great drawing formation of our sect was activated." Tian Kong Laozu's eyes lit up. He said, "That is to say, our sect has quietly obtained 9 spiritual veins this time, which is almost equivalent to 1 spiritual vein of a large spiritual vein." Lu Ping nodded and said, "That is correct. However, it is best for our sect to keep it a secret. We have to say to the outside world that we only obtained 2.5 or 3 spiritual veins, and we have to say this in advance. In any case, our sect is the closest to Universe Island, and we are the first to complete the drawing of the spiritual veins. When the time comes, with our sect's example, even if the other sects only obtained half of the spiritual veins, they will only suspect that it was Songhai Laozu who did it, and not us." Chapter 907. Tian Kong Laozu laughed and scolded, "You're really cunning, kid." As soon as Laozu finished speaking, he saw Lu Ping stomp on the ground. After a while, the ground shook, and Debeo emerged from the ground. He transformed into a fat young man, and then he handed 4 small spirit-gathering pearls to Lu Ping and said, "A large spirit vein has only given birth to 4 small spirit-gathering pearls after so many years. How poor." Lu Ping weighed the pearls in his hand and smiled at Laozu. "Martial uncle, I'll take these pearls." Tian Kong Laozu put the 9 medium spirit veins back into the sect, so he naturally didn't care about the small spirit-gathering pearls. However, he didn't agree explicitly and instead said, "The old man wants to see who the Sea Bell belongs to. At the very least, it can't fall into the hands of the Sea sect." At this moment, Debeo suddenly said, "Laozu, the spirit veins and the earth veins are starting to weaken, and the mountain guarding formation will collapse soon. At that time, the fight for the Sea Bell will probably become a chaotic battle between the human and demon races." Tian Kong Laozu and Lu Ping hadn't thought of this, and both of them were shocked. Lu Ping asked, "How long do we have?" Rumble. Before Debeo could answer, the entire mountain guarding formation started to shake violently, and this was a sign that the formation was starting to collapse. However, although the formation had lost its foundation, it had been embedded in the earth veins for tens of thousands of years. Even without the support of the spirit veins, the process of collapse was still extremely long. Tian Kong Laozu took off and said, "The old man wants to go take a look. You leave first." Lu Ping hurriedly said, "Martial uncle, I'd rather let the giant whale demon king get the sea bell than let Dungi Laozu or Aodian get it." Tian Kong Laozu disappeared in the blink of an eye. No one knew if he had heard Lu Ping's words. Following Tian Kong Laozu's departure, Lu Ping seemed to feel that the sounds coming from the place where the battle had taken place earlier were getting more intense. Without another word, Lu Ping turned around and left. Although he could sense the situation in the battle with his current divine telekinesis, he did not have Tian Kong Laozu's protection at this moment. In the eyes of these Laozu, he was basically a delicious cake that everyone wanted a bite of. At this moment, it was more important for him to leave Earth Island first. Debeo followed closely behind and said, "Boss, this is for you." Lu Ping took a sealed stone box from Debeo's hands. He looked at Debeo in confusion and asked, "What is this?" Debeo shook his head and said, "I don't know either. I saw this box in the earth veins earlier and wanted to pick it up to take a look. Unexpectedly, I was trapped by the restriction formation deep in the earth veins. If it weren't for Linglong's help and the restriction-breaking talisman that boss left me, I'm afraid I would have died inside today." Lu Ping frowned as he looked at the stone box in front of him. Lu Ping was very familiar with the restrictions set up on it, but it was precisely because of this that he could do nothing about it. This restriction could be considered a self-destructing restriction. Only Lu Ping could open it using the correct method. If the method was wrong, or if it was forcefully opened, the stone box would inevitably be destroyed along with the item inside. Perhaps it really was a treasure. Lu Ping put away the item, and Debeo immediately followed him and said, "Boss, do you think this counts as a meritorious deed? If it weren't for my guidance, Linglong wouldn't have been able to intercept those spirit veins so easily." Lu Ping was too familiar with Debeo's skills. He didn't stop walking or raise his head. He directly asked, "What do you want?" Debeo stammered, "Boss, why don't you give me the pair of black jade stones first?" Lu Ping heard this and turned to look at Debeo in surprise. He said, "What? You want to cultivate? Didn't you just break through to the third layer of the core forging realm? Although Failing Island is rich in spiritual energy, I'm afraid you'll have to accumulate spiritual energy for a few years before you can break through to the middle stage of the core forging realm." Debeo immediately fell silent and didn't say anything. Lu Ping took 2 steps and suddenly turned back. "Are you feeling pressured?" Debeo scratched his head and said, "Degue broke through to the middle stage of the core forging realm not long after you arrived on Failing Island. Among us, I've been with you the longest, but my cultivation is the lowest. Peach Blossom is also at the 5th layer of the core forging realm, and Lu Xiaohai is at the peak of the 1st layer of the core forging realm. It's only a matter of time before he surpasses me. Although Sister's Island is also at the 3rd layer, her situation is special." Lu Ping raised his hand to stop Debeo from speaking. He said, "I remember you once said that you wanted to leave the high-grade Earth-level spiritual energy stone to you. I just don't know if you want to use it to smelt a 2nd or a 3rd spiritual item." Lu Ping paused and didn't wait for Debeo to reply. He continued, "If you want to smelt a 3rd spiritual item, then I can give you the obsidian stone now. If you want to try to break through to the transcendent stage, then the obsidian stone is what you need to smelt a 2nd spiritual item to advance to the late stage of the core forging realm." Lu Ping finished speaking and plunged into the protective wall of the array. Although the protective array of the Lone Peak was showing signs of collapsing, such a huge array must have been set up in a complicated manner. Moreover, the internal structure of such a huge array was intertwined. It was impossible for it to completely collapse in a short period of time. Debeo didn't react to Lu Ping's words for a moment. In Debeo's mind, with his aptitude and condition, he would reach the peak of the core forging realm after advancing to the core forging realm. After that, he would just have to wait for death to come. However, Lu Ping's previous words clearly told Debeo that he even had a chance to advance to the transcendent stage. Debeo's entire body shivered. Seeing that Lu Ping had already crashed into the protective wall of the array, he hurriedly chased after him. He shouted, "Boss, wait for me." Debeo frantically crashed into the protective wall of the array, but he was tightly held by an arm. Lu Ping's voice sounded in his ear. "Shut up. Go underground." Without saying another word, Debeo's entire body suddenly exploded into a yellow fog and shrunk into the ground. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. Just as Lu Ping crashed into the protective wall of the array, Lu Ping's divine will seem to capture the aura of someone. However, this person was unusually cautious. In just a moment, he disappeared from Lu Ping's divine will. At this moment, although the array had not collapsed, it had lost its previous strictness. Many loopholes had been exposed. If it wasn't for the fact that Lu Ping's divine will was different from that of ordinary people, perhaps he would not have noticed this little movement. However, it was also because of this fleeting movement that Lu Ping understood that this hidden person was coming for Lu Ping. Who could it be? If it was Lao Zu at the mid-Dharma stage, there was no need at all for him to play this kind of hide-and-seek game with Lu Ping. He could have directly come to take Lu Ping's life. Furthermore, at this time, all the mid-Dharma Lao Zu were probably gathered at the peak of Lone Peak. Regardless of whether or not they had the intention to fight for the Seabell, it would be a lifelong regret if they did not participate in such a large-scale Dharma battle with Lao Zu. Therefore, it could only be an early Dharma adept or another enemy core forging adept. However, if it was Lao Zu at the early Dharma stage, even if there were loopholes in the array, he might not have revealed such a big loophole in front of Lu Ping. Therefore, there was only one possibility. Perhaps the hidden person was an enemy core forging adept. If that was the case, the ambush might not have been made by just one person. Lu Ping did not believe that with the strength that he had displayed so far, there would be any core forging adept in the North Sea who would dare to kill him alone. If they came to fight him fair and square, perhaps there would still be someone, such as the burly man behind the giant whale Demon King, Kong Jing Lao Zu. Behind the protective array in front of Lu Ping, Ouyang Weijian pursed his lips tightly. "Little Ouyang, are you sure that Lu Xinping will pass by here?" A dark-skinned martial adept played with a pair of iron hammers in his hands as he asked Ouyang Weijian, who was in front of him. Ouyang Weijian nodded reservedly and said, "Of course. Otherwise, why would my teacher and your father have calculated the position of Tiankong Lao Zu and Lu Xinping before launching a sneak attack? Unfortunately, it was all for naught. You went for wool and came home shorn, didn't you? I heard that your teacher has now retreated with serious injuries, but Brother Ouyang still dares to stay on Lone Peak. Such courage is really admirable." A mocking voice came from Ouyang Weijian's right side. Ouyang Weijian looked up and saw that it was Zhou Tong, the disciple of Zhang Shi from the Blue Sea sect. A trace of anger flashed across Ouyang Weijian's face as he said, "Who would have thought that Tiankong Lao Zu would actually have a second tribulation spirit treasure in his hands? Brother Zhou, don't go too far." Zhou Tong seemed to turn a blind eye to Ouyang Weijian's anger and continued to provoke him. "I heard that Brother Ouyang has lost to Lu Xinping several times in the past, but was always able to escape with his life. In the eyes of many North Sea cultivators, I'm afraid this is already quite amazing, right?" Ouyang Weijian was furious. A middle-aged cultivator behind Zhou Tong hurriedly said, "You two, right now we should join forces to deal with Lu Xinping. Let's talk about private matters after this matter is over." Zhou Tong smiled and didn't say anything. Ouyang Weijian forcefully suppressed his anger and glanced at the middle-aged cultivator with slight disgust. If the giant whale demon clan's Kong Zhuang hadn't suddenly changed his mind, Ouyang Weijian wouldn't have found this person to make up the numbers. Although this person could be considered as a veteran core forging stage cultivator in the demon clan, and he was a cultivator of the same generation as his teacher Feng Shutao, Ouyang Weijian really didn't trust this person's strength. If it wasn't for his mistake just now, it was very likely that it would have aroused Lu Xuanping's vigilance. Ouyang Weijian knew that Lu Xuanping's divine sense cultivation was extremely high. The four of them occupied the four corners of the array formation space. This way, no matter where Lu Ping rushed in, he would be surrounded by the four of them, and the four of them could then lay down the array formation to kill Lu Xinping. At this moment, if Lu Ping was present, He would be able to recognize at a glance that the dark and strong Kongzhuang cultivator was the primordial giant crocodile clan cultivator who chased after Lu Ping in the deep sea demon territory. His name was Aoli, and he was the younger brother of the Golden Dragon Island Lord Ao Chuang. Now his cultivation had also increased to the peak of the core forging stage, and he was only one step away from the Dharma stage. As for the middle-aged cultivator, he was even more familiar to Lu Ping. This person was the Demon Clan cultivator who set up a formation to surround and kill Chu Xuanqing, and then Lu Ping ruined his plan. Nearly 100 years had passed, and this person had not broken through the Dharma stage, but he was only one step away from the Dharma stage. Chapter 908. Ever since Ouyang Weijian was defeated by Lu Ping in one move on Frost Island, he viewed it as a great humiliation. After the incident on Frost Island, Ouyang Weijian was sent to the Crystal Palace by Xianling's sect. In Water Crystal Palace, Ouyang Weijian had to endure the discrimination and supercilious looks from everyone in Water Crystal Palace. There were even times when he had to become a practice target for those direct disciples. Even after being trampled on time and time again, he still had to put on a smiling face to welcome them. For Ouyang Weijian, who was regarded as a genius in Xianling's sect, this was worse than death. However, he could only endure it. Because Ouyang Weijian, who was regarded as a rising star in the North Sea, couldn't find any sense of superiority among his peers here. In the Crystal Palace, there were plenty of people who had cultivated for roughly the same amount of time as him, but were far more powerful than him. His pride and dignity in the past were completely worthless in front of these people, and could only be used as a topic of conversation for them to despise him even more. But Ouyang Weijian endured it in the end. Over the years in the Crystal Palace, he no longer focused on improving his cultivation. Instead, he began to polish his own foundation. At the same time, he used the cultivation resources in the Crystal Palace to extensively study the specialties of various sections. He gradually began to learn from the strong points of others and compared them with his own natal sword art, the romantic Mary 18 swords, which greatly improved his swordsmanship. As a result of his efforts, Ouyang Weijian was finally able to hold on against the air cultivators of Crystal Palace for a longer period of time. Eventually, he was able to stand on equal footing against them. Rather, he was even able to emerge victorious against cultivators of the same level as him. And the biggest change brought about by the increase in strength was that Ouyang Weijian gradually began to gain the recognition of these arrogant direct disciples. The previous supercilious looks and ridicule had disappeared, and Ouyang Weijian seemed to have once again returned to the ranks of the proud sons of heaven of the past. Over the years, although Ouyang Weijian did not deliberately improve his cultivation level, he had unknowingly raised his cultivation level to the peak of the core forging realm. Compared to his previous cultivation level, which had always been ahead of Lu Ping, Ouyang Weijian's cultivation speed was not as fast as before. However, Ouyang Weijian could feel that his strength had improved with each passing day. This time, Ouyang Weijian could be said to be full of confidence when he returned to the North Sea. He believed that this would definitely be a journey that would allow him to wash away his previous humiliation and make his name known throughout the North Sea. However, after he returned to the North Sea, a bucket of cold water poured over the confidence he had accumulated bit by bit over the years. Lu Xinping had defeated the Dharma adept, Tian Shu Laozu, as a core forging level 9 adept. This was impossible. Ouyang Weijian roared hysterically in his heart. This must be Zhenling's plot, a plot designed to make Lu Xinping famous, and the price was only the sacrifice of an ordinary Dharma adept's reputation. Compared to Zhenling's future, the sacrifice of an ordinary elder was nothing. Tian Shu must have gone easy on Lu Xinping. He desperately needed to verify this news. However, from his own sources, this news was true. Ouyang Weijian was able to persevere under the ridicule of the Crystal Palace adepts. Naturally, he was a person with a strong heart. Although the result of Lu Xinping defeating Dharma adept Laozu was a huge blow to Ouyang Weijian, Ouyang Weijian's confidence was not destroyed. He had stayed in the East Sea for decades, and his vision and knowledge were no longer comparable to before. There were many large and medium-sized sects in the Central Plains, or even overseas powerhouses like the Crystal Palace, who were able to cultivate disciples who could go up against ordinary early Dharma adepts and even win against them. It was not as if they did not exist. But who were these people? They were all 1 in a million geniuses. They had fought their way out of the tens of thousands of adepts in each generation of the Crystal Palace, and they enjoyed the most precious training resources in the Crystal Palace. How could Lu Xinping be compared to these people? Even if Ouyang Weijian had trained in the Crystal Palace for 20 years, the most he could do was to fight a Dharma adept who had just entered the Dharma stage to a stalemate. Of course, this was because he was in a defensive position and was suppressed in all aspects. Although the opponent could not do anything to him at the moment, as time went on, Ouyang Weijian would definitely be defeated by his opponent due to the depletion of his inner yuan. Ouyang Weijian shook his head vigorously, dispelling these distracting thoughts from his mind. At this time, he suddenly thought of something and asked, "How long has it been? Why hasn't Lu Xinping come yet?" Ouyang Weijian's question made everyone's hearts clench. Mo Wei hesitated for a moment and said, "Could it be that Lu Xinping has already discovered the ambush here and has taken a detour elsewhere?" Just as Mo Wei's voice fell, the entire ground suddenly trembled. Even though everyone was a person with profound cultivation, they almost couldn't stand firmly on the ground. "What's going on?" Ouyang Weijian asked in shock. "There's something down there." The one who spoke was Aoyo. The knuckles of his hands that were gripping the iron hammer were already faintly blue, and it was obvious that he was ready to strike. "Is it Lu Xuanping's doing?" Just as Mo Wei finished speaking, Zhou Tong had already brought out his thin water sword. But then there was a scream. Everyone was shocked. When they turned to look, they saw Mo Wei's eyes wide open as he stared at the tip of the sword sticking out of his chest. His eyes were filled with endless fear. He couldn't figure out who the murderer was. Was it Lu Xinping? How did he get behind him? And how did he manage to stab the flying sword into his back so accurately through the protective formation wall? However, he would never have the chance to get the answer to these questions. Zhou Tong, Ouyang Weijian, and Aoli began to move together, gradually forming a triangle directly facing Mo Wei's position. Zhou Tong's eyes narrowed as he watched the sword tip suddenly retract from Mo Wei's chest. He exclaimed, "Changlu sword." Mo Wei fell as the sword tip retracted. The power of the protective wall behind him was greatly reduced due to the lack of the support of the spirit vein. The Changlu sword pierced through the protective wall again and began to cut a circle on the protective wall under the different gazes of the three people. Then, there was a clang, as if the person behind the protective wall had kicked it. The protective wall that was cut by the Changlu sword evaporated into specks of spirit qi and finally dissipated. Lu Ping strode in from behind the protective wall. The Changlu sword circled around him and began to vibrate rapidly. Lu Ping's gaze instantly lit up when he looked at Zhou Tong, and then he turned to look at Ouyang Weijian and Aoli. He said, "So you're all acquaintances. I wonder how I should address you, fellow Taoist from the Songhai sect." To be able to wield the thin water sword, this person's status in the Songhai sect must not be low. To be able to join forces with Ouyang Weijian and Aoli, this person's strength must have been acknowledged by the two. "You're Lu Xinping?" Zhou Tong took a step forward and raised his chin slightly. "I'm Zhou Tong. I've long heard that you're known as the #1 cultivator below the Dharma stage in the North Sea. I wonder if you dare to fight the three of us today." "Zhou Tong? I've never heard of you, but I've fought with Zhang Shi from your sect before." Zhou Tong's face was choked to death by Lu Ping's words. Who was Zhang Shi? That was his teacher. In Zhou Tong's ears, Lu Ping's meaning was very clear. "Even your teacher couldn't do anything to me. Who do you think you are?" Lu Ping looked at this person with amusement. "I thought you wanted to fight me one-on-one. I didn't think that in the world of cultivation, even a group fight can be so righteous." Zhou Tong's face was already pale with anger. He pointed the thin water sword in his hand and said, "You're looking to die." Ouyang Weijian cursed inwardly. Zhou Tong had already charged forward with his sword. Ouyang Weijian and Aoli had no choice but to attack him. Both of them cursed in their hearts. Where the hell did this kid come from? Was he a hothead? Zhou Tong was not a hothead. When Lu Ping mysteriously killed Mo Wei, he had already sensed that Ouyang Weijian and Ao Li had the intention to retreat. However, Zhou Tong couldn't back down, nor was he willing to back down. When he saw the flowing stream sword in Lu Ping's hand, he was already thinking of a way to tie Ao Li and Ouyang Weijian to his ship. What's more, Zhou Tong had full confidence in his 200 years of hard work. Even if Lu Xinping was really as strong as the legends said, they were not to be trifled with. Even if they were no match for him, they could still retreat unscathed. However, if he did not fight, he would lose the opportunity to obtain the flowing sword. Zhou Tong was truly unwilling. This thin water-flowing sword was not only the sword of Songhai sect's founder, Lao Tzu, but also the key to opening Vast Sea Lao Tzu's cave mansion. Unfortunately, the Vast Sea relic had been taken away by others. If the Azure Sea sect had been able to work together, then even if there were others participating in the Azure Sea relic, the Azure Sea sect would have been able to obtain all the benefits before the other sections. It would not have been like now, where the Azure Sea sect had only obtained 10 to 20% of the relic, and there were quite a few treasures that were accidentally destroyed when they were forcibly breaking through the passport barrier. Songhai sect had the thin water-flowing sword, but this was still the case for the other sects. In addition to the secret technique that could greatly increase the power of the thin water-flowing sword, the thin water-flowing sword hid a secret left by Vast Sea Lao Tzu. But what this secret was, the cultivators of Songhai sect still did not know. They only knew that the thin water-flowing sword was not only the key to opening the Vast Sea relic, but also the key to opening this secret. And this secret was hidden in the Vast Sea relic. The thin water-flowing sword formed a silent sword light and stabbed towards Lu Ping in a very strange way. But halfway through, it was killed by the flowing sword, turning into waves of sword that attacked the thin water-flowing sword. Ouyang Weijian's wind-flowing sword and Mary sword had already been condensed into two great magical powers by him. Indeed, after 3 days of separation, one must look at him in a different light. And when Lu Ping's beautiful autumn dew sword blocked the powerful attack of his two great sword magical powers, he was already sure that Ouyang Weijian had at least condensed a magical power talisman in the core space. However, Ouyang Weijian wasn't the only one among Shi Bi's trio. Lu Ping's twin flight swords stirred up a monstrous wave that carried an indomitable momentum. With just one strike, Ouyang Weijian's twin flight swords was shattered. At the same time, Lu Ping's right hand pulled and pushed. Layers of water nets extended forward in front of Lu Ping. Before spiritual master Ao Li's pair of iron hammers smashed down, he was trapped in the layers of water nets and could not extricate himself. Chapter 909. When Lu Ping sensed Mo Wei's aura, he had Dabao sneak into the ground and then used Linglong to disturb the earth's veins, causing a strong earthquake nearby. Dabao took advantage of the chaos to approach the surface and began to determine their positions. Although this would expose Dabao to them, in the face of a sudden earthquake, Ouyang Weijian and the others' first thought was to protect themselves instead of trying to kill the peeping Mo Wei. Although they had thought of using the barrier space of the mountain shielding formation to trap Lu Ping, and also calculated the direction Lu Ping would take, they had forgotten that the mountain shielding formation was on the verge of collapse and its defensive power was rapidly weakening. Moreover, the long-stream sword in Lu Ping's hand had a natural restraining effect on the mountain shielding formation. Previously, if Lu Ping wanted to pierce through the mountain shielding formation, he would at least need Tiankong Lao Tzu to smash it with his axe first. But now, Lu Ping could directly cut through the shield with the long-stream sword. This was also the reason why Lu Ping was able to get behind them in such a short time. Although Zhou Tong had only been in the cultivation world for a short time, it did not mean that he did not know his own limits. Even if Lu Xuanping's defeat of his own sex Lao Tzu was fake, the fact that he had killed the Golden Jiao Island Lord's companion spirit beast in front of so many people could not be faked. Be it Ouyang Weijian or himself, neither of them had the strength to fight Lu Xinping alone. However, Mo Wei had been killed by Lu Ping at the beginning, so the formation that the four of them had prepared could not be used. If they really wanted to fight Lu Xinping to the death, the three of them would have to work together. However, in a situation where both Ouyang Weijian and Ao Li had the intention to retreat, Zhou Tong could only escape with them. Once the three of them split up and Lu Xinping decided to chase after them, the three of them would likely be defeated by him one by one. Zhou Tong brought Ouyang Weijian and Ao Li with him to fight Lu Ping and try to snatch the long-stream sword in Lu Ping's hand. However, they all ignored the fact that although Lu Ping was known as the Water Sword Immortal, he was never a pure sword cultivator. Under Lu Ping's moving mountains and filling seas, Ao Li's twin hammers would be inexplicably diverted every time he struck. Or when he struck with his hammers, countless forces would appear from all directions, wearing down the power of his hammers layer by layer. In the end, he had no choice but to withdraw his exhausted hammers. Otherwise, once he was trapped in Lu Ping's Jinyuan net, he might not even be able to protect his magic weapon. Ao Li was at a loss. If he advanced, his attacks would not be able to get close to Lu Ping. If he retreated, Lu Ping's Jinyuan net would wrap around him at any time. When that happened, Ao Li would be at his mercy. He could only bite the bullet and cooperate with Ouyang Weijian and Zhou Tong to attack Lu Xinping. This was not them besieging Lu Xinping. In reality, Lu Xinping alone was entangling the three of them. Although they had already overestimated Lu Xuanping's strength, the truth was that the pride in their hearts made them unwilling to see Lu Xinping as an opponent on a higher level than them. They only subconsciously saw him as an expert on the same level as themselves. The reason was very simple. Only by doing so would they have the courage to continue chasing after Lu Xinping. Otherwise, they would forever lose the qualifications to stand in front of Lu Xinping. Seeing the situation clearly, Ao Li wanted to retreat. But at this moment, there seemed to be a huge flaw on Lu Ping's side. Lu Ping's Sea of Hundred Rivers flow sword skill suddenly crumbled, but it wasn't a complete collapse. Instead, it was more like a torrent of water gushing out of the East Flowing River sword skill. The Autumn Waters flowing sword skill swept up a monstrous wave, and with an unstoppable momentum, Lu Ping executed the East Flowing River sword skill to its fullest. When Zhou Tong saw that Lu Ping suddenly shifted the focus of his attack to Ouyang Weijian, he was overjoyed. He did not care about cooperating with Ouyang Weijian and directly rushed forward to snatch the flowing river sword. Lu Ping's divine sense suddenly felt a tug. If Lu Ping had not poured enough true essence into the flowing river sword, then even if he did not seize the flowing river sword, he would have made Lu Ping suffer a loss. The Blue Sea sect really had a secret technique on the flowing river sword. Lu Ping's mind turned, and his divine sense and true essence simultaneously mobilized. Without weakening the power of the Great River Flow's East Sword technique, he began to fight with Zhou Tong for control of the flowing river sword. At this time, Ao Li finally saw a flaw. At this time, Lu Xinping had placed most of his attention on Ouyang Weijian and Zhou Tong. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Ao Li threw the pair of iron hammers up, and the hammers that were originally 1 foot long doubled in size. Ao Li held them tightly in his hands and spun them twice before they flew out. The pair of iron hammers smashed towards Lu Ping with great power. The net of true essence that had formed in front of Lu Ping was instantly torn apart in the face of absolute power. Ao Li was already imagining the scene of Lu Ping's flesh and blood splattering everywhere. He could not help but lick his lips, but then his eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. Boom! Lu Ping's entire body was smashed to pieces, but the scene of flesh and blood splattering everywhere did not appear. Instead, it was as if a torrential rain had fallen from the sky. At the same time, another Lu Ping strangely appeared in front of Zhou Tong. How could this be? At the moment when the iron hammer smashed into Lu Ping's body, Ao Li's divine will could still clearly feel the vitality flowing through Lu Ping's body. How could it have changed so suddenly? Could it be that Lu Xinping had already mastered the space magic before he had even reached the Dharma stage? Thinking of this, Ao Li could not help but feel a thump in his heart. When he turned to look, a shocking scene appeared again. Ouyang Weijian had actually escaped. Yes, he had escaped. When Ouyang Weijian saw Lu Ping suddenly display such a magnificent great magic swordsmanship, He already knew that Lu Ping's target was not him. Naturally, Ouyang Weijian did not have the ability to resist such a great magic swordsmanship, but this did not mean that Ouyang Weijian could not escape or dodge this great magic swordsmanship. In a situation where there were many people attacking, such a large-scale great magic swordsmanship was not worth using. This was because in a situation where the opponent could escape or dodge, the cultivator would only be wasting their true essence and dermic powers in vain. Lu Xinping had been cultivating for more than 100 years and had fought countless battles, big and small. How could he not know this? But he still did it. This meant that Lu Xinping had other intentions. He was creating an opportunity for himself, an opportunity to break out of the situation. But this opportunity was under Lu Ping's great magic swordsmanship, and Ouyang Weijian could not stop it. Was Lu Xinping still invincible? A sense of helplessness swept through Ouyang Weijian. He clearly knew Lu Xuanping's intentions, but he could not stop it. Since he could not stop it, this battle was bound to be lost. Then he had to escape. Fortunately, Lu Xuanping's use of this great magic swordsmanship meant that the person he was plotting against was not him. He could use this opportunity to escape. Otherwise, once Lu Xinping broke out of the situation, the first person he would kill would definitely be him. Ouyang Weijian turned around and fled. This time, he did not even have to deliberately dodge the great river flow's east sword technique behind him. Aoli was only stunned for a moment. Suddenly, his entire body shivered, and he also turned around and crashed into the protective wall in the other direction. At this time, there was nothing he did not understand. His priority was to save his life. Fortunately, the formation was getting weaker. The protective formation in the sky was already so clear that it was almost transparent. Only a thin layer of membrane was left. Before Aoli left, he did not forget to turn around and shoot a pitiful glare at Zhou Tong, only to see Lu Xinping suddenly appear in front of Zhou Tong. Under Zhou Tong's horrified expression, a misty white light struck Zhou Tong's body, causing him to be stunned. At this moment, countless streams of sword qi strangely poured into his body like water. Then, Zhou Tong's entire body began to change shape, as if his skin and flesh were being separated. Aoli was scared out of his wits. There was only one thought left in his mind, and that was to never be Lu Xuanping's enemy again in this life. Lu Ping frowned as he looked at Zhou Tong's dead state. Even he himself took a deep breath. Lu Ping didn't expect that the water seep sword skill could be used in such a way. However, this method was a little too cruel. He didn't expect that he would be able to kill Zhou Tong in such a unique way when he didn't use his flying swords. Lu Ping did not doubt that as long as he made a cut on Zhou Tong's body, he could completely peel off a piece of human skin. Lu Ping shook his hand and shot out a silver flame, turning Zhou Tong's body into flying ash. Only then did he take the ownerless thin water sword. Bluish-purple true essence surged out from his hand, and the foreign true essence in the thin water sword was completely expelled. The lingering true essence in the thin water sword was also annihilated by Lu Ping's divine sense. Even if Lu Ping's true essence was vigorous and tyrannical, it was still beyond Lu Ping's ability to refine the thin water sword as smoothly as the Changlu sword in a short period of time. He could only carefully polish it in the future. However, just as Lu Ping began to refine the thin water sword, the Changlu sword unconsciously began to hover around the thin water sword. As Lu Ping completed the initial refinement, not only the Changlu sword, but the thin water sword also began to tremble violently. The two flying swords seemed to be resonating with each other. The clear and melodious sword cry even shattered the large protective array behind Lu Ping. Lu Ping's expression changed. He put away the two swords and grabbed Debao from the ground. His feet flashed, and he fled towards the periphery. The protective barrier that was originally shattered by the sword cry of the two swords was like a signal. The already precarious mountain protective array on the entire lonely peak instantly began to collapse on a large scale. A ray of light suddenly landed in the area where Lu Ping was previously. Dongi Laozu walked out of the ray of light with a cold face. The traces of the fight caused Dongi Laozu's expression to change again and again. In the end, he could only fly away with a trace of luck. Chapter 9-10. Lu Ping sprinted all the way down the mountain and recalled the purple crystal bees. He didn't even bother to collect the spiritual herbs on the ground. He exited the mountain ranges formation and fled in a conveyance light. Behind Lu Ping, with the complete collapse of the Lone Peak formation, the entire Lone Peak began to shake. Countless sand and stones fell from the Lone Peak, which then developed into a large-scale collapse of the mountain. In the end, the entire mountain began to collapse. Lu Ping didn't stop at all along the way. The news of Zhou Tong's death hadn't spread yet. If Dongi Laozu got the news, he would definitely do everything possible to hunt him down. Now he could only fly all the way back to Tianling Mountain to be the safest. Otherwise, even if he stayed on the island under Jinling's jurisdiction, he might be found by the furious Dongi Laozu. However, Lu Ping had to stop after flying for less than 10 miles. But Lu Ping wasn't worried at all. Instead, he was greatly relieved. Celestial Phenomenon Laozu looked at Lu Ping, who stopped in front of him, and asked with a smile, "Kid, you are running away in such a hurry. Is there anyone in the North Sea who dares to hunt you down?" Lu Ping took a deep breath and stepped forward to say respectfully, "Disciple greets Grand Uncle Master." After thinking about it, he bowed to the old man next to him and said, "Junior greets Senior Dao Sheng." Lu Ping didn't know why the two giants of the North Sea would appear here, but there was no doubt that he couldn't be lacking in etiquette. After bowing, Lu Ping said, "Disciple seems to have caused trouble. Grand Uncle Master Tian Kong has other matters to attend to, so Disciple has to return to Tianling Mountain, first to seek protection from the sect." "Oh?" Celestial Phenomenon Laozu smiled and said, "It seems that you have caused a lot of trouble in the North Sea." As soon as Celestial Phenomenon Laozu's voice fell, a long roar came from afar with strong anger and murderous intent. Celestial Phenomenon Laozu raised his head and looked in the direction of the roar. He said, "It seems that you have caused a lot of trouble. Taoist Dongi seems to be very angry. Could it be that you are going to kill Zhang Shi?" Lu Ping was stunned and said, "I know my limits. I can't kill Zhang Shi's disciple. But it seems that Zhang Shi's disciple was killed by me." Ancestor Dong landed heavily on the surface of the sea, his face cold as he stared at Lu Xinping, who was standing in front of Ancestor Tianxiang. Terrifying killing intent surged from his body. However, in front of these two supreme figures of the North Sea cultivation world, Dongi Laozu had no choice but to retract his aura. Lu Ping told Dongi Laozu and Celestial Phenomenon Laozu and Daosheng Laozu about how Zhou Tong and the other three failed to ambush Lu Ping and how Lu Ping killed two of them instead. Celestial Phenomenon Laozu smiled at Dongi Laozu and said, "Taoist Dongi, did this grand disciple make any mistakes?" Dongi Laozu snorted coldly but didn't say anything. Obviously, he had tacitly agreed that Lu Ping was telling the truth. Seeing that Dongi Laozu didn't say anything, Celestial Phenomenon Laozu continued, "Taoist Dongi, you came here in such a threatening manner. Is there something important that you want my grand disciple to do?" Dongi Laozu snorted, but he didn't dare to be presumptuous in front of Celestial Phenomenon Laozu. He cupped his hands and said, "Taoist Tianxiang, it wasn't easy to raise my grand disciple to die in the hands of your sect's disciple. Don't you have an explanation?" Celestial Phenomenon Laozu asked curiously, "Oh, what explanation does Taoist Dongi want?" Dongi Laozu suppressed his anger and said, "Even if my grand disciple plotted against your sect's cultivator first, he still died in the hands of your sect's enlightened Lu Xinping. Death is a big deal. In that case, should enlightened Lu Xinping return our sect's, Songhai Laozu's, thin water unending sword?" Celestial Phenomenon Laozu and Daosheng Laozu looked at Lu Ping in shock. Lu Ping said, "May I ask, Senior Dongi, did your sect bring the thin water unending sword into the Songhai legacy?" Dongi Laozu's face darkened, but he didn't dare to deny it in front of the two Celestial Phenomenon Laozu. He could only say, "No, but the thin water unending sword belongs to our sect's ancestor, Songhai Laozu. This is a well-known fact in the North Sea cultivation world." Celestial Phenomenon Laozu understood Lu Ping's meaning. He turned to Dongi Laozu and said, "This is Taoist Dongi's fault. I've long heard that your sect has found the thin water unending sword, but there has been no news of the flowing sword. This means that the flowing sword doesn't belong to your sect. Since my grand disciple obtained it, it naturally belongs to him. What belongs to Songhai Laozu doesn't also belong to your sect. Dongi Laozu angrily said, Songhai Laozu is our sect's ancestor. This is a well-known fact. Our sect has inherited the thin water, unending sword for thousands of years. How can you say that the flowing sword doesn't belong to our sect? Lu Ping argued, Songhai Laozu is the ancestor of the giant whale demon race, Laozu. According to what Senior Dongi said, the thin water unending sword should also be an inheritance of the giant whale demon race? Lu Ping's words were clearly out of the expectations of celestial phenomenon Laozu and Daosheng Laozu. Both of them looked at Dongi Laozu with inquisitive eyes. Dongi Laozu fiercely glared at Lu Ping. Unexpectedly, a voice came from behind him. Fellow Taoist Dongi, don't tell me you want to deny it? On the lonely mountain peak, that giant whale demon King Kong Jing was able to ring the Songhai bell. Let me ask you, other than your Songhai sect, who else can ring the Songhai bell without refining it? Tian Kong Laozu descended from the sky, clasping his hands towards celestial phenomenon Laozu and Daosheng Laozu. He looked at Dongi Laozu and said, could it be that your Songhai sect has colluded with the giant whale demon race and revealed the Songhai sect's inheritance to them? What nonsense! Facing Tian Kong Laozu, Dongi did not feel the pressure that he felt when facing the two great cultivators. He said sternly, how could my Songhai sect collude with the demon race? Tian Kong Laozu looked up to the sky and laughed twice in surprise. He said, that's strange. The monster cultivator Laozu's sect is irreconcilable with the demon race. In that case, the legacy of the founder of the sect, Laozu, should not belong to your Songhai sect. Fellow Taoist Dongi, please go back. Dongi Laozu hated Tian Kong Laozu for exposing the Songhai sect's secret, but at this moment, he was under the eaves. He could only say in a low voice, well, even if the Changlu sword was obtained by your sect's spiritual master Lu Xianping, the thin water sword was obtained by him from a cultivator of our sect. This is not wrong. Please return the thin water sword to the old man. Tian Kong Laozu's face also darkened. He said, aha, is it right and proper for your sect's disciple to ambush a cultivator of our sect? If the ambush failed, we would have to exchange the weapon back and wait for your next sneak attack. How can there be such a good thing in the world? Dongi Laozu became serious at this time. He turned to Daosheng Laozu and said, fellow Taoist Daosheng, among the cultivators who ambushed Lu Xianping was Ouying Weijian of your sect. He was the one who told the old man about the matter of our sect's disciple being killed. What do you think? Daosheng Laozu had not said much since he and Tianxiang Laozu arrived, but Dongi Laozu's words forced him to express his opinion. He frowned and said, fellow Taoist Dong Yi, it's better to give this matter further thought. Dongi Laozu did not expect Daosheng Laozu, who was known as the #1 expert in the North Sea cultivation world, to say something like this. After a moment of shock, he laughed angrily and said, fellow Taoist Daosheng, perhaps you still don't know that your sect's Feng Shutao has been injured by Tian Kong. He has no hope of advancing to the late Dharma stage in this life. Now that you know this, I wonder if you will give this matter further thought. Tianxiang Laozu's face suddenly darkened. Tian Kong Laozu reached out to touch the storage bag at his waist and looked at Dongi Laozu with a hint of murderous intent. Daosheng Laozu was silent for a moment before he suddenly said, the old man already knew about this matter. This is also one of the reasons why Brother Tianxiang and the old man came here. Fellow Taoist Dongyi, if there is nothing else, please go back first. Dongi Laozu, who had calmed down, finally sensed something from Daosheng Laozu's retreat, so he did not say anything and turned to leave. Tianxiang Laozu looked at Tian Kong Laozu and Lu Ping, then turned to Tian Kong Laozu and said, Junior brother, you go back to Tianling Mountain first. The old man and brother Taoist Daosheng still have things to discuss. After Tian Kong Laozu had left, Tianxiang Laozu suddenly said, Feng Shutao should not join forces with the demons. After a moment, Daosheng Laozu said, Feng Shutao has no hope of advancing, so he has been punished. That's not enough. This cannot be allowed to happen. Dao Sheng Laozu sighed and said, "What is Brother Tian Xiang planning?" Tian Xiang Laozu smirked and said, "With Qiao Feizhou gone, there is one less Dharma plane cultivator among the 12 families of North Sea." Dao Sheng Laozu came to a realization and said, "The spirit stone mine of Frost Island." Tian Xiang Laozu nodded slightly and said, 25 of the share belongs to Jinling." Dao Sheng Laozu sighed and said, "Good." The two stood there without moving. After a while, it was Dao Sheng Laozu who spoke first and said, "The ocean bell is of great importance. What do you think, Brother Tianxiang?" Tianxiang Laozu did not hesitate and said, "Let's recruit them based on our own abilities. As long as it does not affect our plan to fight against Mara, we will not interfere. Otherwise, we will lose the support of the hundreds of thousands of lone cultivators in the North Sea." Dao Sheng Laozu thought for a moment and said, "All right, this person is quite lucky." Tianxiang Laozu did not comment and said, "Let's go. Don't let the two of the demon race wait too long." This universe island collapsed suddenly, and there are many things left inside. "Let's let our disciples practice." Lu Ping followed Tian Kong Laozu and flew all the way to a medium-sized island closest to Universe Island under Jinling's jurisdiction. There was a teleportation formation here that led directly to Heaven Spirit Mountain. It was only then that Lu Ping thought of something. He asked, "Martial Granduncle, who obtained the ocean bell?" Tian Kong Laozu looked like he had seen a ghost and said, "Xiang Lu." "Who?" Lu Ping thought he had heard wrong and said, "How could it be him?" Chapter 9:11. This time, the vast sea relic that caused such a stir in the entire North Sea, the ultimate beneficiary was not the various demon tribes that were well prepared, nor was it the various human sects, but a lone practitioner. Out of all the treasures in the vast sea relic, the one that was truly regarded as the #1 treasure was the vast sea bell that Lao Tzu of the vast sea had used to awe the world. And this vast sea bell had been fought over by the various North Sea forces and Dharma adepts. But in the end, it had fallen into the hands of the lone practitioner, Xiang Lu Laozu. So, in order to prevent Dungi Laozu from obtaining the vast sea bell, you tried to knock it away. Unexpectedly, the lone peak suddenly began to shake, and the entire formation's speed of collapse accelerated. Due to a moment of carelessness, your hand missed the vast sea bell, which was originally intended for the giant whale demon King Kong Jing, and it fell straight into Xiang Lu Laozu's hands. The mountain-splitting axe was also unable to stop in time, and it killed an early Dharma adept who came forward to join in the fun. And this fallen Laozu seemed to be from the Qiao family that had deep ties with Xinling sect. Looking at Lu Ping's strange and incredulous look, Tian Kong Laozu said, "Don't doubt me, this is what happened." Tian Kong Laozu continued, "Speaking of which, it's strange. If the earthquake hadn't happened so suddenly and violently, the old man's mountain-splitting axe would not have missed." Thinking of this, Tian Kong Laozu seemed to have thought of something and said, "Kid, don't tell me that the earthquake was caused by you. You have the Linglong Wine Cauldron, a spiritual treasure that can control the direction of the Earth's meridians. Causing an earthquake is not a difficult task." Lu Ping laughed awkwardly and said, "How is that possible? But I feel that, Uncle Master, when you killed Xiao Feizhou with one blow, it seemed like it was intentional." Tian Kong Laozu chuckled and said, "You want to know? First, tell me if you were the one who caused the earthquake." Lu Ping looked behind Tian Kong Laozu and said with a smile, "Aya, the teleportation portal has started to activate. Little fox, old fox." The two of them cursed inwardly, then stepped into the teleportation array. After a flash of white light, the two of them arrived at Heaven Spirit Mountain. On Heaven Spirited Mountain, Lu Ping widened his eyes and said, "What? When did the beast race invade Huangli Island? How is Huangli Island now?" "Senior brother Lu, don't worry. Huangli Island is safe and sound." Looking at the furious Lu Ping, Zhang Xuanqing and Deng Jie felt their blood freeze. Only when facing the furious Lu Ping could they, as fellow disciples, directly feel the gap between them and Lu Ping. When Lu Ping heard that Huangli Island was fine, he calmed down a little. Once someone was able to block the demon race's mid-Dharma Demon King, then the remaining two early Dharma Demon Kings would not be able to do much. However, just as the three demon cultivators thought that there were other Dharma adepts lying in ambush in Jinling, Zhang Tianlin Laozu made the first move. This Zhang Tianlin actually dared to fight against the three of them alone. Where did he get such courage from? Just based on the fact that he had just cultivated a Dharma soul to advance to the mid-Dharma stage? The Dharma soul might be of some use before a cultivator advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, as it could give him an advantage over other cultivators of the same stage. However, after advancing to the mid-Dharma stage, the advantages of the Dharma soul would be lost. At this point, Zhang Tianlin would be no different from other mid-Dharma adepts. The three demon cultivators Laozu rushed forward together, but the result was depressing. Although Zhang Tianlin had just advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, his level of practice was enough to suppress the mid-Dharma Demon King, and he even had the strength to deal with the attacks from the other two early Dharma Demon Kings. For a moment, Zhang Tianlin Laozu was still able to hold his own against the three of them. As time dragged on, it seemed that Jinling's reinforcements would arrive soon. The three Laozu Demon Kings began to use their trump cards. Since there was no hope of conquering Huangli Island, as long as they could seriously injure Zhang Tianlin, the top expert among the second-generation disciples of Jinling, it would be a worthwhile trip. However, at this moment, Zhang Tianlin Laozu took out a small tree. Strictly speaking, it was a small tree-shaped treasure, and there were 108 green leaves hanging from it. The mid-Dharma Demon King gasped. This was not an ordinary treasure. It was obviously a spirit treasure. Since when did Jinling have a spirit treasure like this? Wasn't it said that Jinling only had 4 spirit treasures, and none of them were in Zhang Tianlin's hands? Originally, he could have fought the 3 demon kings to a draw without using a spirit treasure. When Zhang Tianlin Laozu took out the spirit treasure wood and used it with his own spirit treasure, the 3 unprepared demon kings were quickly suppressed by Zhang Tianlin Laozu. This time, they were not evenly matched, but they had the upper hand. Originally, the 3 demon kings thought that they could escape unscathed. Unexpectedly, there was a peak core forging adept hiding nearby with an extremely high level of concealment. Although the 2 mid-Dharma Laozu demon kings had noticed, they did not pay much attention. The 2 early Dharma demon kings did not notice anything at all. Who would have thought that in the end, this hidden cultivator would suddenly make a move after Patriarch Zhang Tianlin had the upper hand? He actually managed to seriously injure one of the early Dharma stage demon kings when they were caught off guard. This was beyond the expectations of all the Dharma adepts, including Zhang Tianlin Laozu demon kings. The situation on the battlefield changed once again. With 6th Brother Lei's sudden attack and restraint, Zhang Tianlin Laozu demon kings had complete control of the situation. In the end, the other early Dharma Demon King was also injured by Laozu Zhang Tianlin's fallen petals, and his vitality was taken away for tens of years. The mid-Dharma Demon King took the opportunity to escape from Laozu Zhang Tianlin's control and rescued the 2 injured early Dharma Demon Kings. The Demon Clan's attack on Huangli Island had failed once again. However, the impact of the battle on Huangli Island on the entire North Sea was even greater than the vast sea treasure. This was mainly because of 3 things that had happened during the battle. The first was naturally the outcome of the battle. Zhang Tianlin Laozu had successfully advanced to the mid-Dharma stage and had a first Calamity Spirit treasure. He had battled against the Demon Kings of the Demon Clan and was not at a disadvantage even though he had fought 1 against 3. This had a huge impact on the entire North Sea. The number of Dharma adepts in Jinling had already caused the entire North Sea to look askance. Zhang Tianlin Laozu Zhang Tianlin's powerful strength after advancing to the mid-Dharma stage had caused a huge impact on the entire North Sea training world. Then, there was the appearance of that spirit treasure. In addition to the wine cup-shaped auxiliary spirit treasure that Zhang Tianlin had previously obtained in the Yingtian dojo, as well as Patriarch Tiankong's invincibility in the vast sea relics with a second tribulation spirit treasure, Jinling sect now had at least 7 spirit treasures in front of the cultivation world of the North Sea, 2 of which were second tribulation spirit treasures. However, who knew if there would be an 8th spirit treasure appearing in Jinling? The second matter was the peak core forging adept, sixth brother Lei, who had taken the opportunity to injure an early Dharma adept of the demon clan. Information about this person was quickly gathered by the various sects in the North Sea. They only knew that this person was not a Jinling adept, but had been appearing in Huangli Island for the past 20 years. He seemed to have a close relationship with the owner of Huangli Island, Lu Xianping. However, the thing that made the entire North Sea training world shudder was the fallen petals profundity that Zhang Tianlin Laozu had used to injure the early Dharma adept. After Zhang Tianlin Laozu, Zhang Tianlin had advanced to the mid-Dharma stage. He had also successfully elevated his natural great ability to the supreme level. This was also the first time in 100 years that a supreme ability had been used in a battle in the North Sea training world. However, this was not the main point. The main point was that the fallen petals profundity contained a nature-defying effect, and that was to deprive one's life force. 108 green leaves, each representing 1 year of life force. Perhaps the combined attack of 108 natal magic treasures would not be able to kill the opponent, but it would be able to rob a cultivator of his life force for 108 years. The early Dharma adept Demon King had been hit by Zhang Tianlin Laozu's 36 emerald green leaves. Even after recovering from his injuries, his lifespan would be shortened by 36 years. Chapter 9:12. After Lu Ping returned to Huangli Island, he learned about the details from Hu Lili. His teacher, Lu Tianling, had already sent someone over to find out more about Lei Laoyu's background. A cultivator who was at the peak of the core forging stage and could even fight against an early Dharma Demon King had suddenly appeared in front of everyone in Jinling. Not only would the sect pay special attention to him, but even Zhang Tianlin Laozu had personally come to ask about Lei Laoyu's background. Lu Ping had no choice but to tell Zhang Tianlin Laozu about the process of subduing Lei Laolu. After hearing that Lei Laolu had actually been placed under the soul-controlling restriction by Lu Ping, the way he looked at Lu Ping changed. For someone like Lei Laolu, not just in Jinling, but even in the 5 holy lands of Middle-earth and the East Sea Crystal sect, he was like a direct disciple. Even in the North Sea, perhaps only Ouyang Weijian could compare to him. However, this person, who would be nurtured as a treasure in any sect, had been used by Lu Ping to guard his home with the soul-controlling restriction. Not to mention Zhang Tianlin Laozu. Even if Tianxiang Laozu was here, he would not feel the same way. After sending off Zhang Tianlin Laozu, Lu Ping gave Hu Lili the 4 spirit gathering pearls that he had obtained from the vast sea relic, then went into the secret room. After spending nearly a month, Lu Ping had finally refined the thin water sword to the point where it was like the flowing water sword. Just as Lu Ping finished refining the thin water sword, the flowing water sword combined and swam around Lu Ping's body like a pair of fish. The cheerful sound of the sword echoed throughout the secret room. Lu Ping's divine will captured something as the flying swords circled around him. As the 2 swords trembled, Lu Ping's divine will seemed to sense that something had broken. He hurriedly probed into the swords and found that a layer of previously undetectable restriction runes was undergoing a rapid transformation. Lu Ping did not know the depth of it, but thinking back to when Dongyi Laozu had repeatedly asked for the thin water sword, there must be some secret hidden within the flying swords. At this moment, the transformation of the hidden restriction runes was completed. Lu Ping's inner yuan and divine will instantly refine the newly formed restriction runes. Lu Ping's expression suddenly changed to one of joy. What a brilliant restriction technique! It was actually able to hide a treasure restriction in such a mysterious and ingenious manner. When the 2 swords of the thin water unending flow sword were separated, the treasure restriction that was connected to each other was hidden in the runes of the other treasure restriction. If one wasn't a tool refining grandmaster, it would be very difficult for them to detect the difference. At this time, whether it was the thin water sword or the flowing water sword, on their own, they just looked like spirit-nurturing magic treasures that had condensed 8 restrictions. Once the 2 swords combined and the hidden restriction runes were activated, the flying sword's 9th restriction runes would automatically form and become a top spirit-nurturing magic treasure. Lu Ping's divine will could clearly sense the extremely strong spirituality hidden within the two flying swords. This was the characteristic of a magic treasure that had reached the peak of the spirit-nurturing level. It only needed to pass the lightning tribulation and condense pure yang qi to become a spirit treasure. The beautiful autumn water sword in Lu Ping's hands could also be considered a rather good pair of flying swords. However, compared to the thin water sword that belonged to Songhai Laozu, the gap was really not easy to make up for. Lu Ping looked at the pair of flying swords with a joyful expression. With this pair of flying swords, Lu Ping's strength would be greatly improved. However, this pair of flying swords would also cause a lot of trouble. At least, the Songhai sect would look for any opportunity to take back this pair of swords that belonged to the founder of their sect, including killing Lu Ping. However, after being warned by celestial phenomenon Laozu, the Songhai sect would at least not make a move on him for a short period of time. However, Lu Ping did not dare to be careless. After killing Zhou Tong and snatching the thin water sword, the hatred between Lu Ping and the Songhai sect could no longer be resolved. The only thing that eased was the mutual scruples between the two sections. After all, the situation in the North Sea was becoming increasingly serious. If the two sects fought, regardless of victory or defeat, the strength of the human race would be weakened. Lu Ping's heart moved, and he took out the stone box that De Bao found in the depths of the lonely peak. Lu Ping carefully injected qi into the stone box, and the mysterious runes on the surface of the stone box suddenly lit up. At this time, the thin water-long sword around Lu Ping also seemed to resonate with the stone box. The sword body tilted and the sword tip pointed towards the stone box. Lu Ping thought to himself that this thin water-long sword was not only the key to opening the Songhai sect's treasure, but it was also the key to opening the mysterious stone box. Lu Ping's heart moved, and two sword lights were fired from the pair of flying swords, directly shooting towards the surface of the stone box. The scene of stone chips bursting out did not appear as he imagined. The flashing runes on the surface of the stone box suddenly lit up. When the two sword lights hit the stone box, they completely submerged into the runes. Then the runes on the entire surface of the stone box began to flow. The speed of the flow was so fast that even Lu Ping's spiritual force could not capture it. At this moment, he heard a kacha sound, and a fine crack appeared in the middle of the stone box. Lu Ping was overjoyed and slowly opened the stone box. A purple jade slip lay in the middle of the stone box. Lu Ping raised his eyebrows and held the jade slip in his hand. His spiritual force quickly entered it and began to read the contents. As he read it, a few days passed. It was not that the contents were complicated, but that the jade slip recorded a set of supreme sword technique inheritance of Songhai Laozu. Lu Ping was momentarily fascinated by it and began to figure out and cultivate it on the spot. Therefore, it was delayed for a few days. However, although this sword technique inheritance was precious, what Lu Ping valued more was what was recorded at the end of the jade slip. After Lu Ping came out of seclusion, the first news he heard was that there were problems with the spirit veins drawn from the various sects of the North Sea and the demon race's vast sea heritage. First, Zhenling, who was closer to Huanyu Island, claimed that out of the 5 medium-sized spirit veins that Tian Kong Laozu had drawn from the Lone Peak, only 3 ended up in Zhenling's main spirit veins. Back then, Tian Kong Laozu had forcefully snatched away 5 medium-sized spirit veins from the Lone Peak. At that time, he had offended many people. Therefore, after hearing this news, many people from the various sects of the North Sea and even the demon race clapped their hands and secretly mocked Zhenling for getting what he deserved. However, not long after, news came from Feiyu and Lingu sects that only half of the spirit veins they had drawn from the Lone Peak ended up in their sections. At this time, the North Sea cultivators began to realize that there seemed to be a problem. Sure enough, Yujin sect and Chongming sect both claimed that the spirit veins they had drawn were severely depleted. Out of the 2 medium-sized spirit veins, only 1.5 were in their hands. Even Xiang Lu Laozu, who had obtained the vast sea bell and had been hiding until now, released the news that he had only obtained half a medium-sized spirit vein. This time, other than Xinling sect, the other sects were no longer gloating. Due to Feng Shutao's foolish actions, Xianling sect's losses in the vast sea heritage almost outweighed their gains. When the entire Xianling sect received the news of the severe depletion of the spirit veins, they naturally cheered loudly. It was just that these cheers made people feel sour. Lu Ping smiled. If the various sects knew that the strange depletion of the spirit veins was actually caused by Lu Ping, who knew how many sects would come knocking on his door. However, 9 medium-sized spirit veins were almost equivalent to the replenishment of a large spirit vein. To the entire Jinling sect, this was undoubtedly a great boost. Soon after, Lu Ping received news from Hu Lili that Huanyu Island had become a trial ground for the blood condensation disciples of the various sections. Thinking of the broken formations, restrictions, and protective walls that covered the entire Huanyu Island after the collapse of the Lone Peak, as well as the large amount of spirit herbs and materials that had yet to be collected, and even the treasures and instruments that were discarded on the island, Lu Ping thought to himself that no wonder. It must be the idea of the 2 great cultivators, Tian Xiang Laozu and Dao Sheng Laozu that day. Otherwise, the sects wouldn't be so cautious in following this rule. Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "It just so happens that I have a few things that I need to do after I return to Huanyu Island. However, I can't go now, so I'll send a few disciples over." Hu Lili said in surprise, "Didn't you just come out from there? Did you leave some treasures inside?" Lu Ping smiled bitterly and said, "You can say that. I didn't expect those things to be so important at that time. I hope it's not too late and that the trial disciples of the various sects haven't gotten to them before me." Lu Ping summoned the Fang siblings and Tsang Wu. The 3 of them were already at the peak of the blood condensation realm and were only one step away from advancing to the core forging realm. He told the 3 what he wanted to find one by one, then sent them to Huanyu Island to train on their own. At the same time, he told them not to reveal the purpose of this trip. If anyone asked, they should just say that they were going out to train. After thinking for a moment, Lu Ping gave them a few single-colored and 2-colored restriction-breaking talismans and instructed them not to reveal these talismans in front of others. Then, he told them to find Debao and get a few suitable instruments to protect themselves. After sending the 3 of them off, Lu Ping thought for a moment and sent out a sound transmission sword. The next day, Du Jialua arrived at Huangli Island from Tianling Mountain. Ever since Lu Ping returned to Huangli Island, Du Jialua had come to visit Lu Ping several times. However, he didn't run into him even once. What he didn't know was that Lu Ping had already seen him in the Byring Tower. Disciple greets Uncle Master. Although Du Jialua was almost certain to become Lu Ping's disciple, Lu Ping had instructed him that he would only accept Du Jialua as a disciple after he had advanced to the core forging stage. Furthermore, Du Jialua was not allowed to reveal his relationship with Lu Ping. Thus, even though Du Jialua was already at the 8th layer of the blood condensation realm and was about to advance to the peak of the blood condensation realm, and his earth-based techniques were quite famous among the 4th-generation disciples, he still didn't formally acknowledge a master. He only trained with perfected master Lu Xianyuan. Lu Ping passed a jade scroll to Du Jialua. After thinking for a moment, he tossed a jade token to Du Jialua and said, "Go to Huanyu Island and find what's recorded on this jade token. After that, go to the crafting hall and look for Grandmaster Chen Lian. Give this jade token to him, and he will know what to do." Du Jialua took the token and was about to leave when Lu Ping called him back and handed him an escape talisman weapon. "I've already filled this talisman weapon with inner yuan. When you're in danger, just activate it and cultivators below the Dharma manifestation stage won't be able to do anything to you. Use it well." Chapter 9:13. After Xiang Lu Laozu obtained the vast ocean bell, he hid his tracks and did not appear in the North Sea cultivation world. The sects Laozu all extended an olive branch to the independent mid-Dharma Laozu of the North Sea in view of the destructive power of the vast ocean bell against Mara. However, there was no response. At one point, Lu Ping wanted to use Ling Long to find the approximate location of Xiang Lu's old feet through the traces left in the earth veins by forefather Xiang Lu. But unfortunately, the mountain collapsed and the earth veins shifted. The entire Huanyu Island was in ruins, so even Ling Long herself couldn't find it. Seeing that the situation on Frost Island was becoming more and more tense, the sects all sent out messages, hoping that Xiang Lu Laozu would help the human cultivators defend against Mara's attack. When the news came, the entire North Sea cultivation world noticed the subtle changes. It seemed that if this Xiang Lu Laozu did not appear, not only would he offend the sects of the North Sea, he would also be placed on the opposite side by the entire North Sea cultivation world. After all, the calamity of Mara would sweep through the entire cultivation world. Every cultivator had the duty to fight against Mara. However, if Xiang Lu Laozu appeared, then it would be hard to say if he could continue to control the vast ocean belt under the pressure of the sections. Recently, another piece of news spread like wildfire. That was the Qiao family, one of the 12 families of the North Sea that had Dharma Laozu as their leader. Laozu was mistakenly killed by Tiankong Laozu during the battle for the vast ocean treasure. Without Dharma Laozu, the Qiao family was in a constant state of anxiety. There was news that Jinling and Xianling sect would work together to divide the Qiao family's share of spirit stones on Frost Island. However, neither Jinling nor Xianling sect's Dharma Laozu directly responded to this matter. It was as if the two sects did not know about this. However, this also made the other 11 forces feel relieved. They were afraid that the sects of the North Sea would plot against them for their share of spirit stones. These clans usually only had 1 or 2 Dharma adepts in their ranks. There was no way they could compete with the 9 great sects of the North Sea, which had at least a mid-Dharma adept in their ranks, like Laozu. Right now, the situation on Frost Island was growing more and more severe. It was obvious that even Mara had been attracted by the spirit stone mines on Frost Island. At that time, all the sects and families would definitely send out their elites to protect Frost Island. If the sects took the opportunity to plot against the Dharma idol Laozu of these families and forces, they would not be a match for him. Therefore, these 11 sects became more and more united. Fortunately, although there were rumors, the major sects never took any action against the Qiao family's share of spirit stones. This made the previous worries of the 11 forces gradually relax. The scale of Mara's attacks on Frost Island grew larger and more frequent. The entire North Sea was mobilizing their forces. Frost Island could be said to be the most important object in the entire North Sea cultivation world. It was also the first large-scale battle between the North Sea cultivation world and Mara. Jinling was also constantly making preparations. Naturally, Lu Ping was also called up. However, before he went to Frost Island, Fornax Laozu had already sent him a message, asking him to make a few batches of soul return pills. The soul return pill was a strange pill recipe that Lu Ping found in the Clear Stream cave abode. It could repair a cultivator's damaged divine consciousness. It was targeted at cultivators who had been seriously injured by the soul-devouring magic of the demonic cultivator. The main material to make the soul return pill was the soul-devouring crystal of the demonic cultivator. The grade of the soul return pill depended on the grade of the soul-devouring crystal of the great demonic cultivator. The soul return pill made from the soul-devouring crystal of the great demonic cultivator could heal cultivators who had been injured by the great demonic cultivator's soul-devouring crystal. The soul return pill made from the soul-devouring crystal of the blood demonic cultivator could also heal cultivators who had been injured by the blood demonic cultivator. By the time Lu Ping and Fornax Laozu had finished making a few batches of soul return pills, the battle on Frost Island was already in full swing. Both sides had suffered heavy casualties. On Jinling's side, even though spiritual master Xianqin was personally in charge of the mother-child traction formation, it was said that the number of core forging cultivators who had died during this period of time was in the double digits, not to mention the other sections. However, this was also because Jinling occupied the largest area on Frost Island, so the area he was defending was naturally the largest. Even though Jinling's current strength could be said to be the best in the cultivation world of the North Sea, he could only fight head-on like this. As time went on, the number of casualties would naturally increase. Other than those who had died, there were even more people who were injured. Fortunately, the entire pill pavilion was operating at full capacity during this period of time. With Lu Ping's help, Jinling's various healing pills were considered sufficient, reducing many of Jinling's losses. On this day, Lu Ping finally completed the mission that Fornax Laozu had given him. Thinking that he was going to Frost Island soon, he walked towards the artifact forging hall. After guiding the 9 mid-sized spirit veins over and merging them into the main vein of the spirit vein on Tianling Mountain, the concentration of spirit energy on the entire Tianling Mountain had obviously increased. Although Junling had tried his best to slow down this process to avoid arousing too many people's suspicions, for someone like Lu Ping who had extremely long divine senses and was extremely sensitive to spirit energy, it was extremely clear. Chun Lian saw Lu Ping from afar and waved at him, saying, "You're here at just the right time. Saves me the trouble of looking for you." Lu Ping smiled. "Not bad. You've already advanced to the late stage of the core forging realm. It looks like becoming a Grandmaster Artificer won't be a problem." Chun Lian threw a psychic jade pendant to him and said, "Here, this is your jade pendant. I've already condensed 2 psychic spirit treasures on it, and it's almost reached the limit of this psychic jade pendant's quality. If you want to improve it further, I'm afraid you'll have to find better spirit materials." Lu Ping held the jade pendant in his hand and played with it. After hanging it on his waist, he could see through the 3 pure true pupils that the psychic jade pendant was filled with a misty light. Lu Ping took off the jade pendant again and said, "This jade pendant was given to me as a greeting gift by my senior sister when I became my disciple. Originally, I only wanted to refine a top-grade magic tool, but I happened to find some suitable spirit materials, so I upgraded it all the way until now." Chenlian said, "Although this psychic jade pendant can be considered a rare and precious treasure, it has innate limitations. The amount of spirit energy it can gather is almost a hair from 9 oxen for you and me. For early-stage core forging realm cultivators, it has some use. However, if you can find 10 millennia spirit jade, you may be able to upgrade it to the level of a spirit-nurturing magic treasure. In that case, it may be of some use to cultivators like me. Moreover, after using the 10 millennia spirit jade to upgrade its quality, it may have the qualifications to challenge the Thunder Tribulation and become a spirit treasure in the future." How can 10 millennia spirit jade be so easy to find? That thing is not inferior to a high-grade heaven-ranked spirit treasure. With a piece of 10 millennia spirit jade, you can directly refine a spirit treasure. Why would you use it to upgrade this psychic jade pendant? Lu Ping also had Linglong's wine cauldron in his hand. These things that were precious to others naturally didn't catch his eye. Under Chan Lian's surprised gaze, Lu Ping threw the jade pendant back to him and said, "You're right. This psychic jade pendant was originally not upgraded for me. In a few days, there might be a boy who will bring my jade pendant to you. At that time, you can give this jade pendant to him." Chen Lian said with a smile, "Oh, for it to be so important to you, could it be that you want to accept another disciple? But this jade pendant is just right for me." Lu Ping just nodded and didn't say anything. Instead, he handed a jade slip to Chen Lian and said, "Take a look at this first." Chun Lian took the jade slip doubtfully and checked its contents with his divine thoughts. After a while, he frowned and said, "Why do you want to refine this thing?" Back then, there were many people who wanted to refine this thing, but no one succeeded. Lu Ping asked straightforwardly, "Can you forge it?" Chun Lian pondered for a moment and said, "The refinement process of the vast ocean bell has almost been figured out by the cultivators back then. Naturally, it can be refined. However, after the refinement, it still doesn't have the special killing effect of the real vast ocean bell against demonic cultivators." Lu Ping asked seriously, "Have you really studied the sea bell thoroughly?" Of course, under Lu Ping's gaze, Chunlian put away his confident expression and said, "After all, besides Songhai Laozu and now Xiang Lu Laozu, no one has personally touched this treasure." Lu Ping snorted and said, "Even if they touch the real thing, they might not be able to refine it." Chun Lian's eyes lit up and said, "Did you find something?" Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "It's hard to say. Other than the kid who came to you with the jade token, there should be 3 more disciples coming to you. They will bring some spirit material ores with them. You can give them some rewards and then refine the spirit material ores and hand them over to me. Then, we'll try to refine the spirit material ores together. What if we succeed?" Chun Lian was obviously not very interested in the sea bell. Maybe it was because he didn't think he could successfully refine it. But after hearing Lu Ping mention refining spiritual material raw ores, he suddenly remembered something and said, "Speaking of refining raw ores, it reminds me that you have an extremely brilliant purification technique. Coincidentally, all the spiritual materials needed to upgrade your landslide have been prepared. All you need is to upgrade the quality of the magic treasure and condense the spirit-nurturing magic treasure. This is my first time trying to condense the spirit-nurturing magic treasure. Your purification technique will be very useful in upgrading landslide to a spirit-nurturing magic treasure." Lu Ping smiled and said, "You are grabbing a strong man. I still have a mission from the sect." Chunlian smiled and said, "Isn't it just the matter of Frost Island? The sky is dark and the earth is dark. So many Dharma idol Laozu are biding their time there. Can one more person like you turn the situation around and return victorious? My matter is much more important than you going to Frost Island." Lu Ping thought about it and agreed. If Chunlian could successfully upgrade this time, he would be Jinling's second Grandmaster Artificer after Tianjiang Laozu. The significance of this wasn't any less than that of a Grandmaster Alchemist in the Pill Pavilion. The sect had no reason to stop him. 3 months later, a dull bang came from the Artifact Forging Hall. The ground shook violently, and the entire Artifact Forging Hall started to shake as if the entire Artifact Forging Hall was about to collapse. Many alchemists ran out of the Artifact Forging Hall and saw Tianjiang Laozu standing at the door of an artifact forging room in the distance. Just when everyone was confused, the door of the artifact forging room suddenly opened. A haggard-looking Lu Ping and a dirty-looking Chen Lian walked out one after another. However, they didn't hide the joy in their eyes. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.